You'd never catch me at McDonald's these days, but I have no qualms with fast food. No, my boycotting of the hellhole beneath the Golden Arches started in my youth. I scarcely escaped that wretched place with my life. The year was 2008, and the man behind the cash register looked to be 3 times my height. Perhaps I've exaggerated that in my head. And though I say man, he must have been a teenager, possibly only a few years younger or older than me. To my fearful eyes, however, he loomed as tall as a giant. "Welcome to McDonald's," the cashier said, smiling. "May I take your order?" I was standing sheepishly next to my 2 friends from school, Mickey and Tom. They were giggling and nudging me, and I was plucking up the courage to fulfill the requirements of my dare. It had seemed so much easier when we were standing outside the premises. Standing before my intended victim, however, the devious plan had lost any semblance of humor. But if I'd back out at that point, I never would have heard the end of it from my friends. And social exclusion was the worst thing on earth for a boy that age. An innocent boy, I might add. I summoned the courage to say, "Yeah, I'll take a bag of fries as greasy as your face, please." Mickey and Tom guffawed like a couple of hyenas, but I just stood there silently as the acne-ridden teenager eyed me with a cold, solemn silence. He did not laugh, neither did I. And perhaps worse, he didn't chastise me for the rudeness either. He had nothing to say of my immature, ridiculous comment. When he did respond, I was not expecting the words from his lips. "One moment," he muttered before walking away. I turned to face my 2 friends, who had had tears welling up in their eyes. Thankfully, there was no one else in the restaurant. It was late in the evening, nearly closing time, no doubt. Nobody to witness that horrifying spectacle. The side door burst open like a resounding crash, slamming into the wall. The quiet teenager cashier was joined by a burly, bearded man with a badge that read "Manager." "Come at me, you terrors," the man roared, silencing my chuckling friends in a split second. Let's get out of here," Mickey said, gulping. The 3 of us ran for the door, hot on Mickey's heels, but our friend slammed face first into the glass and crumpled onto the floor. "It's locked," Tom cried. "What do we do?" "You 3 will come with me," the manager repeated, strolling over to us. "And we'll sort this out properly." "Thanks, Dad," the teenager chirped from behind him. I realized I'd messed up, but I didn't quite grasp the severity of my crime. Not until the burly father figure had rounded up we 3 rascals and ushered us into the preparation area of the restaurant. "What's your name?" he asked me. "Graham," I said. "Do you know what happens to children such as you, Graham?" the manager asked me. "I'm so sorry," I muttered. It was a dare." Tom snorted, but he quickly muffled his mouth with his hands when the manager shot a piercing look in his direction. "Something funny, boy?" the man asked, turning his attention to Tom. "No, it wasn't me. It was Mickey's idea," Tom spluttered. "What the heck, Tom? Snitch?" Mickey huffed. "So, Mickey," the manager said, walking over to my friend, "how did such a brilliant idea pop into that big juicy brain of yours?" Mickey's sturdy demeanor was starting to falter. We just thought it'd be funny." "Just thought it'd be funny, did you?" The manager chuckled. "Yes, well, so did my boy Jamie. He found it hilarious. Rushed to tell me about it, didn't you, Jamie?" The teenager hovered in a darkened corner of the preparation area, nodded quietly. "He's always laughing about his acne," the manager continued. "Isn't it funny that my face is greasy, Dad? He's always saying that." "Okay, sir, we understand," I whispered. "I'm really sorry for saying it. It wasn't funny at all." "Don't apologize to me," the man bellowed, suddenly bending down to my eye level. "Apologize to my boy." I started to cry, turning to the ever-silent, unwavering teenager in the corner. I'm sorry, Jamie. I'm so sorry." Jamie didn't say anything. He watched me with that same cold, unfeeling look. He nodded in acceptance of my words, however, and that lifted at least some of the horror I felt. I naively believed it to be over, the terror of being dragged into the preparation area. but I was wrong. I believe you, Graham, the father said, nodding, but I keep catching little Mickey and Tom snickering away into the palms of their hands. Are you two boys truly sorry, too? Mickey rolled his eyes and I felt my heart sink, but he nodded. Tom managed to stifle a laugh that I could sense desperately striving to escape his lips, but the manager wasn't buying any of it. I could see the deranged glint in his eyes. You're not sorry, Mickey, are you? The manager asked. And before my friend could answer, the towering father had seized him by the throat. Tom and I screamed in unison as our mischievous friend was hoisted from the floor, legs flailing wildly. Let me go, Mickey croaked. Let you go, the manager laughed, and waste that juicy brain of hilarious ideas? I'm curious, Mickey. Curious to know how such meat tastes. Before we could react, our tiny friend had been hurtled headfirst into the fryer. He screeched at an inhuman level, drowning out the screams of Tom and me. And though he writhed in the boiling liquid, scrambling for an exit, we knew that he was in a watery grave. The manager held him down, slowly frying our friend alive. I suddenly became aware of Jamie charging towards me, face still wearing a deadpan expression, but he slipped past me. I turned my head to see Tom running away, but the manager caught my other small friend before he even made it past the cash till. Bring him here, the father growled, still holding down Mickey, but seemingly meeting less resistance from my slow-dying friend. What do we make this one into? Jamie asked. The father pondered. I think Mickey would be a delicious Big Mac. Decadent meat, that brain of his, I'm sure. Little Tom here, he'd make some fine nuggets, I think. Look at him, he's only small. Realizing that I had seconds to save myself, my eyes darted to the fire exit I'd spotted when we first entered the staff area. Before the manager and his son could avert their attention to me, I ran. And I was one of the best track runners in my year, so you better believe me when I say those tiny legs could run. I'm sure I broke some form of record as I scurried to the door. Stop him, the manager yelled. But Jamie's arms were full of Tom, and I'd already pushed down the handlebar, opening the back door onto the McDonald's car park. I ran into the night, screaming for help, and a pair of dog walkers quickly stopped to check that I was okay. I explained the events of the night. The police were called, but the manager and his son had long fled the restaurant when authorities arrived. They were never caught, and to this day, I wonder whether they might still be out there, punishing children. That's why I'll never eat at McDonald's again.
There are some advantages to living on the second floor of an apartment complex, especially when your next-door neighbor is also a sexy young thing by the name of Christine Fowler. I've admired her from afar ever since she moved in, and even got her to do a little light housekeeping for me. But nothing is better than going to my window at night and sneaking a peek. There was one night, though, that I was standing on my second-floor balcony smoking and whacking when I noticed, to my surprise, something was blocking my view of Christine's room. I zipped up my pants and leaned over the balcony to get a better look. It was some kind of mannequin, like the kind you might see in a storefront window for a dress store, except really, really old. I could tell it was made of solid dark wood and had the frame of a male model. For a second, I had actually thought it was a guy in Christine's room, but she never had men over. The mannequin had splotches of paint that was peeling in different areas on its arms and face, almost like it was covered by some sort of leprosy. It was wearing a thin, long-tailed dark coat and a buttoned-up white shirt and a red bow tie. I wished I could get a better look, but Christine came back toward the model and started measuring it again. When had she taken up sewing classes? I saw she had set up a box of thread and fabric near her bed and even had an old sewing machine at the right window. When did she have the time to get all this? I don't want to say that I watch her room on a regular basis, but it's not like I have anywhere else to go. I kept watching and admiring her work, realizing how much care she was putting into the thing. She smiled in a way that she never did toward me. I saw her bring in a box with a few different wigs and try them on her model that next night. She stroked the dark hair affectionately, and sung a soft lullaby as she tailored another outfit for it. I realized she had to love this thing, as odd as that sounds. The way she was so gentle with it, and making sure every single outfit was a perfect fit. I decided that I would ask Jeremy to order me some of the same style clothes off the internet, and started dressing like the mannequin did as well. It felt good to get clean clothes, and when Christine touched the cheek of her model, it was like she was right there touching my own skin. I studied the mannequin, envying the attention it was getting, wishing I could somehow turn her attention toward me. It bothered me to no end. I could see the sparkle in her eyes as she would trim its hair or touch its chest. She loved that thing, as though it were real. Then she spotted me. One night, I was out smoking on the balcony, and I noticed the mannequin was gone. Curious, I leaned over the railing to see if maybe she moved it, and then saw her beautiful blue eyes staring straight up at me. In a panic, because my trousers were halfway down, I made my way back inside and closed the patio sliding glass. A few minutes later, my phone was ringing. It was Christine. "Hey, Mr. Simpson?" she said in the sweetest voice. I loved when she addressed me like that. "Good evening, Christy. How are you?" I answered. I didn't want her to know I was nervous. "Would it be all right if I brought something over to your place tomorrow?" she asked. My heart skipped a beat. I didn't know what else to do but to say yes. I wanted things to be perfect for Christine, so I made Jeremy leave to go do a few errands. Christy has a key too because she comes over to do our housekeeping. I managed to get on the nicest suit that matched the mannequin and then waited for her to step inside my room. When she did, she was bringing a small wooden box in with her, and I smiled in delight. It had to be the gift she said she wanted to give me. "You look perfect, Mr. Simpson. I guess you really have been paying attention to my work," she said. "How could I not? You've been on display for the whole world to see," I told her. "No, just you," she said. Her red lips puckered out when she said it. Then she passed me the box. "I want to see what you think of the finished product," Christine said. I eagerly opened up the lock and reached inside to see what it was. A few seconds later, I was dropping the box in shock as the hollow wooden head of the mannequin rolled onto the floor. It stopped right at the edge of my foot, and I looked down at its grisly visage, the wrinkled lips and the pale-looking skin that covered its frame. It looked exactly like me in every way. I don't understand," I admitted. "Are you sure?" Christy asked as she picked up the mannequin's head. "I wanted to get every detail right, Mr. Simpson, and that's why it's taken so long to get done. The hair was the hardest part, because Jeremy wouldn't show me any pictures of you when you still had some of your own," she explained. "Why are you giving me this?" I asked nervously. It felt weird staring at it. The only thing missing were its eyes. Instead, she had cut open 2 empty holes. "No, silly. I wanted to make sure I got the details right before I put on the finishing touches," she said cheerfully. I was about to ask what she meant when she placed the mannequin down on my lap and straddled my lap. I was sweating like a hot pig as she touched my face, but it wasn't like I had dreamt it would be. This time, I was scared. She reached into her pocket and took out the same long needle she had used 1,000 times to finish the garments for the mannequin. Then she held me down and jabbed the needle straight under my eye. I screamed louder than I have ever screamed in my entire life as she kept her legs tight around my waist. I tried to push her off, but at my age, I was no match for her strength. I could only sob pitifully. "Stop! Please, for the love of God!" I screamed out desperately. Christine didn't, though. She took her other hand and covered my mouth. I could barely keep myself conscious as she held it up like a trophy. Then, she placed it right in the empty socket for her mannequin. I kept sobbing bitterly, praying to God that she would stop. After another half hour of digging, she had taken my right eye as well. When she was done, she let go of my frail body and leaned over to kiss me affectionately on the cheek. Then I heard her leave the room, her heels clacking like hooves as she went down the stairs. Jeremy found me a few hours later on the floor, blood and a little bit of urine covering my body. I had been trying to get back into my wheelchair for almost an hour before that, using my cane to bang against the metal pipe and hope someone would hear. The next 8 hours were a blur. I was rushed to the hospital for emergency surgery and in and out of consciousness more times than I could count. We pressed charges on Christine, but by the time we had made it back to the apartment, she was long gone. Adjusting to being blind has taken some getting used to, but I think I finally have gotten the hang of using voice to text. Something has been bothering me a lot recently about the whole thing. I asked Jeremy recently if anyone had moved to Christine's old apartment. "Grandpa," he said, "nobody is going to move into that spooky place." "Why not?" "The police didn't ever file a public report," I said, but he didn't tell me the answer. But I think I know. I know every time I go out and smoke on the balcony, I think the mannequin she made is still there.
"911, what's the nature of your emergency?" I made a mistake. Such a huge mistake. I'm such an idiot, and this is... Oh man. I'm about to pay the price. Is that what's happening here? Is this penance for my sins? Please calm down, sir. Do you think you'd be able to start from the beginning and tell me what's happening? What have you done? Oh, it's not like that. I've not committed a crime. Well, not in the eyes of the law. Okay, I'll start from the beginning. I'm Samuel Johnson, and my girlfriend, Laura Parker, is... Well, she's on the other side of this bathroom door, and she's being beaten. It's horrible. Who's beating her, Samuel? Where are you? The Clockwork Hotel. I know the one. Which room? 14. Thank you, Samuel. Officers are responding immediately. What can you tell me about the assailant? It's her husband. I know. Look, not that this counts as an excuse, but it's certainly a reason. She tried to leave Michael. Oh, how she tried. Countless times, but he threatened to kill himself. I mean, what kind of person does that? It's a cruel threat. So she's been trapped in a relationship that she hates, and, well, I didn't mean it to happen, but it did, and Michael's lost his mind because she's pregnant. Whose child is it? It's mine, of course. Right. What happened between you and Michael, Sam? Nothing good. I think he's been watching us for a long time. I tried to save her. He'd beaten her before, stalked her, and, of course, threatened to take his own life. Hers too, I think. I knew he was a psychopath. I don't think Laura wanted to accept it, but she was certainly scared, and I didn't blame her. I would have rang the police a long time ago, but I thought it would damage our relationship beyond repair, and I love her. I've always loved her. I guess that doomed her, and now I'm hiding on the other side of the door, calling you because I'm bleeding out. I guess I'm a coward. I can still hear her screaming, crying. I don't know how much longer she can last out there. I think I need to be brave. Don't do anything stupid, Samuel. Does Michael have a weapon? No, he put my head through the hotel window and I almost fell to my death. My face is covered in glass. A big shard got me and I'm losing so much blood. But no, he doesn't have a weapon. Just immense strength, I guess. Or adrenaline? I don't know. But he's beating her with his fists over and over again. I can hear it. Okay, Samuel. An ambulance is on the way too. I need you to hold on a little longer for me. Can you do that? I don't know. I need to go out there and save her. She's gonna die. Our baby's gonna. Oh, I can't do this. Is he stronger than you? Do you have the ability to stop him from continuing to beat her? Probably not, but I could distract him and she could run away. She could escape with our baby. Not that she'd ever forgive me for locking myself in here. She's still crying out there, though. She must still be alive. But he sounds angry. So angry. I think you should stay in the bathroom, Samuel. Officers will be there within the next 10 minutes. And they're trained to handle situations such as this. You are not. And you might end up hurting yourself or even Laura if you get involved. I know, but I can't live with the guilt. Just hold it together, Sam. A little longer. Tell me how all of this spiraled so terribly out of hand. How did you and Laura happen? Did you know she was married when you started seeing her? Like I said, we've been best friends for a long time. 10 years, long before Michael came along. And yes, I knew it was stupid to start a relationship with a married woman, but she couldn't leave him, okay? They were in an abusive relationship, and I looked after her. This is a moment of weakness right now. I'm letting her down. So maybe I'm no better than that monster out there. But this baby, this whole messed up situation, it wasn't her fault. It wasn't my fault. This was all Michael. It's always been Michael. I just wish I'd called you sooner. Maybe Laura would have hated me, but none of this would have happened, right? 8 minutes, Samuel. I just need you to hold on for... Oh, Sammy boy! Won't you come outside and talk for a second? I'm asking awfully politely, after all. Just leave her alone, you monster! No, I don't think I can do that, Samuel. Something's come over me. I think you'll have to come out here and stop me. Come out and save the mother of your child, you coward! Okay! Samuel, officers will be there in a matter of minutes. I need you to tell them I wasn't a coward. Not in the end. Samuel, please, just hold on for me and we... There's a good boy! Now, give me a hug, and we'll call it even, okay? I'll let Laura go. I promise. Just one hug. No, don't do anything stupid. Just come here, Samuel. Come on. Come. Yes, that's it. That's right. Just one little... Oops. Oopsie daisy. I slipped. I slipped, Sammy. I keep slipping. It's just so... Sleep now. Sleep. When officers arrived at the scene of the crime, Michael Parker had fled the hotel. Laura Parker was beaten beyond recognition, and Samuel Johnson had bled out on the carpet. Laura Parker and her baby survived after hospital treatment, but Samuel Johnson succumbed to his injuries. Michael Parker has still not been found by police. After a thorough investigation, Laura Parker revealed that her husband had been physically and emotionally abusing her for years, confirming Samuel Johnson's story on the phone to the dispatcher. Once her affair with Samuel Johnson and resulting pregnancy was discovered by Mr. Parker, he hired a private investigator to track the pair to a nearby hotel. Upon finding them, Michael Parker proceeded to savagely attack Samuel Johnson until he crawled into the bathroom and made the phone call transcribed above.
3:30 p.m. I log in to get my next assignment. The client is what I expect, a nameless corporate entity. The message on my screen is short and precise. Request: 2 ocular implants, fresh, prefer green. Fee: $1,500 or negotiable upon receipt. I'm online for less than 2 minutes, no more and no less. It's easier to not get traced that way. Closing the connection to the dark web, I gather my equipment and move out to start my job. 4:20 p.m. I think I do a pretty good job at selecting donors. Usually, I search for people who don't really deserve the good in their lives, the ones that take it for granted. This one is no different. Homeless, wasting their money on booze and drugs. It's doubtful they'll even miss their eyes once I carve them out of their skull. The screams are hard to hear, but I'm strong enough to ignore it and get what I came for. If they are lucky I killed them. If not, they will go to the rest of their life remembering our encounter. 5:30 p.m. Log back in, sending a message to the client. This time, it's my turn to try and be succinct. Punctuality and preciseness are appreciated in this sort of business. This much I have learned quickly. Package sent, requesting payment. Further items can be queued for future delivery. I always make sure to include that last little bit as a means to promote myself, although I have never had the same client twice. But to my surprise, the representative is online and requests a chat. This is unusual. It sends some red flags through my mind, but I know not to ignore. Whatever they have to tell me, it's obviously important. You've proven yourself to be quite a capable agent. Your finesse and attention to detail are exquisite, the message reads. I appreciate the kind words, sir, I respond. No need for those formalities. Call me Derek, he answers. This is highly informal, I realize. The contacts I usually get business from never get personal with me. It's just the nature of the job. I have a proposal to continue your work with us, Aaron, the text reads. My heart starts to race. Everything about this conversation that had seemed unnatural has immediately heightened 10 times. They know me. Of course they know me. They've been monitoring me since day one. Everything I have done in this hell is to erase my past, but with one simple stroke of the keyboard, they have brought it all back. You must be panicking right now, but there's not a need for alarm. You've proven how capable you can be, so I think you'll see very soon how those skills will be useful to you over the next few hours, the text said. What do you want with me? I asked back in chat. You've been on the run for as long as you can remember, Aaron. What we are offering to you is a chance to go home, Derek responds as an order pops up on screen. It's a few different types of organs ranging from grown adult brains to spleens from children and appendages that I figured could be used for all sorts of nefarious purposes. But I recognize immediately that these aren't just random requests anymore. The company is targeting people from my past. I gritted my teeth, knowing that refusal would be a death sentence. I had to get to them before my time ran out. Understood. Mission accepted, I responded to Derek as I logged off and got the tools I would need for the job. Feet, fingers, ears, heart. I would need to be perfect to protect the people I cared about. 7:30 p.m. 3 years ago, I'd have laughed if you told me that people sell organs on the dark web. It sounded like a fairy tale, some silly little fable to scare children away from doing something that they weren't supposed to. Then, mid-October, I was in a car wreck and headed for surgery. I would need a new heart to survive. I remember lying there and thinking to myself that I would do anything to save my body, but I simply couldn't afford the expense. It's not like there were any fresh hearts just laying around. Plus, the person that I had been in the car wreck with was a well-known member of the community. I knew that since they also needed the same surgery, it was likely they would get the treatment instead of me. Then, a friend of mine that had been visiting me frequently in the hospital, watching my body begin to shut down, made the odd conversation about the dark web. I know it sounds crazy, Aaron, but people can get exactly what you need from the strangest of places. No questions asked. You simply pay them a fee and the organs will be here by morning, he told me. I told myself it couldn't be that easy, but the prices offered on the dark web were just within my budget. I was that close to tasting a second chance on life. Of course I would take it. I still remember that first request, hooked up to machines in the hospital, making a deal with devils online. Requesting one new heart. Will make good on payment once recovered. I told myself I was willing to do anything for another chance. When the next day I discovered the organ was there and I was being prepped for surgery, I found out exactly what that price tag was. The doctor, another lackey under their thumb named Matthew, explained how I was now their slave as well. Your social media profile shows you're a hunter, Aaron. You know the ins and outs of properly cleaning dead bodies, getting the best parts from a deer or wild hog. Humans aren't any different. Work for us to pay back the remainder of your debt, and you'll never have to worry about anything again, the surgeon said. I could see he was sad as well, that I had chosen this sort of life. But what else was I supposed to do? These memories flooded back to me as I drove across town to my old stomping grounds. I hadn't been able to successfully keep this new life from hurting the people I still cared about. But tonight, I would make sure their safety was ensured. 9 p.m. I've learned a lot in the years I've worked for clients on the dark web, more than I ever cared to admit. Killing has become second nature for me. So as I stand outside the house where I once had a life and see my ex-girlfriend standing there doing dishes, oblivious to the hit that is looking over her head, I can't help but to feel broken inside. It would only take 2 simple shots to the head and she would never feel a thing. Her organs would be taken off in a matter of seconds. I aimed my weapon with a shaking hand, and then I fired. 11 p.m. Later that night, I'm in the hospital again. A different surgery is about to take place. This is one not your local ER. It's an underground dungeon where criminals like me go to get patched up. 2 hands will be removed for the payment to my clients. I ask them to let me use a computer before the operation begins, and I shoot a message to the ones I'm leaving behind. This isn't the life I wanted or cared for, but I've done everything in my power now to protect you. No one will come for you. No one will hurt you. I promise. Aaron. I know that it won't take long for them to get it once I recover from my injuries. By that time, all that will be left to fulfill the client's request is a heart. 2:30 a.m. At some point, I'm awake after surgery, looking down at the stubs of flesh that were once my hands and feet, both destroyed forever so that the people who have forgotten about me don't have to suffer. Matthew is the one that did the surgery, following my request explicitly so that my clients will never know what I have done. This feels like a fitting end to my career as an agent of darkness, that the last organs I supply to the dark web are my own. My clients have learned to trust Matthew. They'll never think twice about using them. Clients like Derek that need these organs will offer them like puppy dogs with wet bones to their suppliers. They'll never question where the organs came from. They never do. 4:30 a.m. My surgery is about to start. I'm told that I have a message on my private laptop. Matthew unlocks it for me so that I can see what the email says. I know it's likely another client checking on their order. But no, this one is different than I expected. It's a reply to my farewell. It pains us to see that you have chosen to take your own life rather than that of others. Such a sacrifice feels like a waste. Don't you recognize that as long as the world turns, there will be people like us and people like you? Your sacrifice is meaningless, the email read. Tears swell up in my eyes, but I can't let them know that they have won. I have to be strong for everyone. So I ignore their messages and tell the surgeon I'm ready. It's time to say goodbye. If you're reading this now, it should be 7 a.m. after Aaron's untimely death. All of his organs have been harvested and supplied to the ones that asked for them. Those new organs will have already been placed in their hosts, dangerous people unaware of the fact that I poisoned Aaron's own body and laced it with drugs designed to be untraceable even during an organ transplant. They'll be joining me in hell soon enough. I've arranged for this message to spread across the rest of his client list on the dark web as a warning. It's true there may one day be people just like him who will do anything to extend their lives, but there will also be people who put others first, regardless of the harm to themselves. My prayer is that his journey into the abyss inspires them like it did me.
"911, what's the nature of your emergency?" I think I need some help. My parents have been watching me." "Watching you?" "Yeah, they've installed a camera in my room. I found it last night and tried talking to them about it, but it didn't go well. And now they've turned nasty. They've threatened to, well, I've locked the door, but..." "Take some deep breaths. What are your parents saying?" "They're shouting horrible things. I stole the SD card from the camera and I said I'd use it as evidence. It made them really angry. I shouldn't have done that." "What's your name, dear?" "Tilly." "Well, you did the right thing when you called us, Tilly. Are you safe right now? Do they have weapons?" "No, I don't think so." "Do you think you'd be able to give me your address?" "I don't know. That might make it worse. They'll probably calm down, right?" "Tilly, I can hear the shouting and banging from my end of the phone. Even if we put aside the seriousness of your parents invading your privacy, this sounds like a domestic disturbance that we have a responsibility to investigate." "Oh, I wish I hadn't called. Tilly, I promise you did the right thing. Please let me know your address so I can send some officers to the scene. Okay, it's 57 Elm Tree Drive. Thank you, Tilly. I'm going to make sure 2 officers respond to your call right now. My stepdad's shouting at me for calling you. He heard what I said. He's banging really hard on the door now. Are there safe hiding places in the room? I guess I could hide. Well, I better not say aloud, but yes. Do that for me, Tilly. The officers should be at your location within the next 20 minutes. I just hope he doesn't try to kick the door down. I can't believe Mom's not helping me. How does your stepfather usually treat you, Tilly? I don't know. I'm 20 and he's been in my life since I was 10. He always had an inappropriate obsession with me, but Mom never seemed too bothered. Or she didn't believe me. I don't know. It's gotten worse over the past couple of years. Now that I'm fully grown. Okay, Tilly, this is all important information. Thank you. How did you discover the camera? I was talking to one of my friends on a video call and I noticed it on the shelf behind my laptop. It was tiny. A miniature camera wedged between 2 dusty books that I haven't touched in years. I was distracted for a moment and I found myself absent-mindedly looking at them. I noticed something shiny and, well, that's when I found it and it was turned on. Right. Thank you, Tilly. Can you hide the SD card in a safe place? I guess I could take it with me into the ward, into my hiding place. I think you should hide it somewhere more discreet, not on your person, somewhere your stepfather won't find it. I'm worried he might hurt me. Has he hurt you before, Tilly? Yes. Oh God. The banging stopped and I just heard him say something about... Oh God. What did he say, Tilly? He told my mom that he was gonna get something heavier, and she just called me a spoiled brat. Are you in your hiding spot, Tilly? Yes, but my room isn't exactly big. It won't take them long to search everywhere. How long is it going to be before the officers arrive? Probably another quarter of an hour or so, Tilly. I need you to hold on for me. Have you hidden the SD card? Yes. I don't think he'll find it. It's really small, but He's knocking on the door again, and it's much louder this time. The wood just splintered. He's going to get in, isn't he? I'm going to need you to be quiet, Tilly. Be quiet and stay very still. We need to buy the officers as much time as possible. Tilly? Where are you, you little... Just give me the card and we'll be square, okay? I'll stop filming you. Promise. I just need you to be a good little girl for me, okay? You know things always go better when you're a good girl. It doesn't have to hurt, does it? Why do you always want me to hurt you, Tilly? Just give him the card, you little brat. You should be grateful that men find you so attractive. It won't last, you know. No, it won't. I'll probably leave you alone when you grow old and start to wither like your mother. Heck, I could even give you a cut of the profits. Is that what you really want? You want to be a little OnlyFans floozy? This ain't a forever thing, darling. But pain, that can be a forever thing. If you don't give me what I want. Where is it? And where are you, for that matter? You vile thing. What a waste of a pretty face. So true. What are you without that pretty face, huh? That pretty body? You really do drive me insane, Tilly. In the best and the worst way. Oh, I see. I think I know where you've been hiding. I think I can even hear you. No, don't! Hang up the phone right now. Please, not again. Not... The call cut out mere minutes before responding officers arrived on the scene. There was no trace of Tilly Hull or her parents, but an SD card was found after a thorough search of her room by investigators. It contained footage of Tilly in various states of undress. The victim has still not been found. It was confirmed by investigators that the victim's stepfather, Roy Milton, and mother, Sandy Milton, were filming their daughter for 3 years. They profited from the sale of multiple inappropriate videos on various websites. Upon realizing they had been caught and would face a criminal investigation, they kidnapped their daughter and fled their family house. A hunt for the suspects is ongoing.
My name is Lauren, and I used to run a small YouTube channel where most of my time was spent unboxing stupid games and showing them off to my viewers. My best friend Kylie told me about how they were making quick cash doing makeup tutorials, and I thought to myself, sure, I could do that. Except not that, of course, because I'm not exactly beauty pageant material. Growing subscribers was harder than I expected. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my channel. Sometimes I would just talk, but that barely got any views. Then one day, I decided to do an unboxing of a simple little mystery box I ordered, and the views skyrocketed. Went from maybe 13 likes to 1,900 in a day. It was mind-blowing to me to think that anyone was really wasting their day watching me unbox a simple little box with a few knickknacks inside. But they were, and they loved it. And apparently, they wanted more of it. This is cool. I've always wondered what was in those boxes. You should do more videos like this. Try some of those weird boxes they advertise on Facebook. I see them on my thread all the time, and I always wonder if anyone is crazy enough to buy them. I would pay good money to see something crazy happen from those mystery boxes. I knew I had to think fast and jump on this trend before it became stale, so I went online and tried to find as many loot crates, mystery boxes, and other collectibles as I could. The next week, I had a dozen or so of them show up at my door. I started doing one per day and making sure I recorded my live reactions to whatever was inside. It was kind of fun, really, to never know what I was ordering and then be surprised as I opened it on camera for my viewers, except that it wasn't quite as entertaining as they had hoped for. Not gonna lie, this trend has gotten old fast. Snooze fest. Find something else to do. Those mystery boxes are boring compared to what I have seen on the dark web. Why not go shopping there? The last suggestion intrigued me. I'd heard different strange rumors about the dark web before, but had always been too scared to check it out. I was so sure it was nothing but bad luck and criminal activity, but apparently these users went and bought stuff off untraceable websites all the time with no consequences. I asked Kylie about it. Sure, I've done that before, but you just have to be careful where you're buying from, and what you're purchasing, and how. It sounded complicated, but Kylie explained how it worked. Most of the customers here want something in exchange for whatever it is they are offering, and I don't just mean your money. They expect a little bit more. Take this dude for example. He's asking for 2 nude photos and then he will send his software to the client, she said, pointing to a thread at random. Well, let's hope I don't have to do that, I teased as we searched for anything related to mystery boxes. This sounds interesting, but it says that they expect the contents of the box to be discovered live in front of an audience and not beforehand. Can you do that? Kylie asked. That's perfect. My live stream needs something weird for Saturday, I said. The transaction didn't take longer than 5 minutes, and according to the seller, the mystery box would be delivered in only 2 days. It was a narrow window, but I would make it work. It arrived as anticipated on my porch, a large rectangular black box with only my address on it, no return receipt. It was heavy. I had to get my dad to help me bring it in the house and take it to my room. What the hell did you order, Lauren? Feels like lifting weights for a gym, he complained as we slid it inside. Thanks for the help, Da, I said, closing the door and excitedly getting my camera ready. I had already teased my viewers with the mystery box the day before. As requested by you, my faithful viewers, straight from the dark web itself, this mystery box will be opened live tomorrow at 3:30 Central Time, I told them. And now it was time to prove it. First, I showed the box itself on camera, just to show that I didn't make this myself, I told the unseen audience. Then I cut into the box and eagerly reached my hand inside to take out the first item. It felt squishy and warm. I tensed up and pulled it out, trying to not panic as I realized it looked like a severed finger. Clearly someone has a sick sense of humor. Let's keep going, I said, putting it aside as I saw my views going up dramatically. The chat was on fire. Was that real? Wait, what was that? What else is in the box? Next was a small marker box like you might get from school supplies. Inside was a bundle of dark hair and a note. It looked like there were coordinates on the side. Not exactly sure what this is supposed to be, but it looks like whoever I ordered from decided this was going to be a horror show," I said with a nervous laugh as I opened the box wider. At the bottom of the box, there were crumpled up pieces of paper with scrawled writing on them in a strange wrapped up object that looked like a ball of some kind. I was praying that was all it was as I lifted it out of the box and saw that it was dripping blood. "I'm going to have to cut the feed," I told my viewers as I unwrapped the item. I was so sure it was a sliced off head, but to my relief, it was just a mannequin. However, it did resemble Kylie a little too closely. It made me reach for my phone and call her immediately. "Hey, was wondering when you were going to call. Your stuff came in the mail today. When are you going to come and pick it up?" she asked. I was trying to keep my composure as I raced out the door. "Kylie, tell me exactly what it is," I said as I turned around and realized I had forgotten my keys. My phone was blowing up with comments from the stream as I tried to not panic. "You want me to open it?" "Well, okay, hold on," she said. No, don't do that," I shouted, but she didn't respond. I was reading the comments and realized it was all from the same user. "Finish the items," the comment kept repeating. I looked down in the box and took out the crimped pieces of paper and realized it was some kind of code. I had to quickly unscramble as I heard Kylie come on the line again. "Never seen anything like this, Lauren. It looks like some kind of..." She trailed off as I managed to work out the puzzle. "Bomb! It's a bomb! Kylie, it's a bomb!" I shouted. As soon as I finished the sentence, I heard a loud boom on the other side of the line and my heart dropped. I ran out with the keys and raced to my friend's house to see if this was really what had happened. I didn't want to believe it until I saw it for myself. Sure enough, less than a block away, I saw fire trucks racing to her house. Her garage was a smoldering flame. My phone pinged over and over as I sat there in stunned silence. It would have been more entertaining on live stream. You failed the instructions. Then I saw more comments on the thread. "Wow, this chick is crazy. She just killed her friend. Have you seen the vid? I bet she manufactured that pipe bomb herself. There wasn't any damn dark web involved. That's one way to get 15 minutes of fame. Hope they lock her up." Then my dad called me. "Lauren, the cops are here to ask you a few questions. Have you heard about Kylie? Lauren?" I didn't respond. I was in too much shock. I just sat there paralyzed in fear as I watched my best friend's corpse being removed from the building. This was my fault. All my fault.
"911? What is your emergency?" "Lovely night, isn't it?" "Sir, this line is meant for emergencies only." "Sorry. No, you're right. Sorry, I'm just nervous." "Where are you calling from, sir?" "I'm in my car, driving with my wife." "Are you or your wife in any danger?" "We just came from that lake at the south of town. Really beautiful scenery there. We got out to the boat and tossed a few lines to catch some fish." "Sir, if this isn't a serious matter, I'm gonna have to hang up." "Well, we thought we saw something strange at the bottom of the lake." "What did you see? Where was this?" "Yeah, that's the one." "And can you describe what you saw?" "Well, I debated it for a minute, but I'm pretty sure it was a human leg." "Was it difficult to see at first?" "Well, no. I know it was a leg, but honestly, I didn't want to get involved. I'm very busy." "It's actually illegal to not report a crime of this manner, sir. Can you give any further descriptions?" "Oh, wow. I didn't know that. Look, I will call back. I figured you guys should go check it out or something." "We will send units out immediately. Thank you for your call." 911, what is your emergency? Yes. I called in about 45 minutes ago about the body part at the lake. I'm the person you spoke to before, sir. Is everything all right? Did you, manage to find the leg? Sir, I can't really disclose those details. Units went to investigate the claim. It wasn't a claim! I was telling the truth. Oftentimes we have prank calls, everything has to be verified. Oh, okay. I guess it's best to cover your bases. Is there a reason you called back, sir? Do you have any further information to assist with the case?
Well, no, not exactly. We stopped off at a diner off of the interstate on our road trip, and I went to go dump my food when I saw something in the dumpster behind this restaurant.
And where was this?
Over off of the interstate at exit 17. I think the place is called Macy's.
What did you see in the dumpster?
Pretty sure it was an arm.
A human arm?
Well, it wasn't a mannequin. It looked like it belonged to a woman.
Did you disturb the scene?
No. I got out of there immediately.
All right. We should be able to get units out there after they finish up with the first scene.
How long could that take?
I can't disclose any estimate, sir. But if you are needed for a statement, we will contact you.
I wonder if it's from the same body. That would be weird, huh? It looked like they got chopped up with an axe.
Sir, if that's all you have to report, I need to hang up and allow this line to be used for other callers.
Sure. Yeah. Keep up the good work.
911, what is your emergency?
I think we talked before. It's me again. Guy finding the body parts.
Did you find another one?
As a matter of fact, I did. Another leg this time. I'm on my way toward Mexico, and this one was on the side of the road. I almost ran it over.
Sir, can you give us your exact location? I will need you to remain there until the police arrive to give a full statement.
I don't think I can do that. My wife has been wanting to go on this trip for a while now. We've been traveling all day.
Sir, this isn't a request. This is likely a homicide. The body parts we found earlier were identified as female. Also, there was a report earlier that your wife was missing from her workplace today.
That's crazy. She's right here next to me in the car.
May I speak to your wife?
Sure, hold on. May I help you?
Sir, I'm not sure what game you are playing, but you need to pull over now so that the police can question you.
My husband hasn't done anything wrong.
If you refuse to cooperate, force will be used to apprehend you, and charges may be filed. If you have committed no crime, I suggest you cooperate.
I'm going through a tunnel.
On the evening of August 8th, 2023, the preceding calls were made by a Robert Nerman, age 25, from several different locations. The first call led police to a lake town near Hasita, New Mexico. They discovered in Wamos Pond a human leg, fitting of a 36-year-old woman, later identified as the caller's wife, Laura. Laura was brutally chopped up by her husband the night prior after a domestic dispute, which was reported by neighbors. Her husband used a log chopping axe to cut her body into several pieces, and then proceeded to spend the following day disposing of them as he attempted to flee the border. It is unclear why Robert chose to send authorities to the locations of where he dropped his wife's body parts at. Although police psychologist Clark Riven suggests that the man's conscience over his deplorable act must have caused him to have a mental breakdown. Prosecutors claim, however, that Robert was deliberately misleading 911 to attempt to flee the country, knowing that they would be long behind him. He specifically called smaller local 911 agencies in certain areas to attempt to cover up his crime. After the final 911 call, dispatchers contacted the Border Patrol, who set up a spike trap on the highway, stopping Robert's escape attempt. Inside the car was found the severed head, torso, and other body parts of his wife. The entire car smelled of death and was covered in blood. Robert willingly complied to be taken into custody. The prosecution is asking for him to be given a life sentence without possibility of parole.
It was a road of great length and numerous inadvisable detours that led me to Myanmar. My gambling addiction was the catalyst, of course, and in my desperation to finally write off all incurred debts, I was willing to take any job opportunity that presented itself to me. But one would think that family could be trusted when trying to crawl out of a vulnerable place. I never expected my uncle, a loved one so near and dear to be capable of taking advantage of me in that position. He deceived me into flying out to Myanmar for an interview. I did so under the assumption that I'd be applying for a high-paying translation job, something that could resolve my money troubles in a matter of months. It seemed like the answer to all of my problems. Perhaps not a permanent solution, but one that could get me back onto my feet. Work in Myanmar for 6 months to a year, then fly home. That was the plan. But none of that happened. After I arrived in Myanmar, I drove to the supposed company headquarters, which was hidden within the mountains. I was, of course, suspicious when I arrived in the mountain village. Many of the buildings were derelict, and the people seemed to live in squalor. But I dismissed my initial reservations, chastising myself for judging those in an impoverished state. I waited for my uncle to arrive, but he never came. And my thoughts of delays or miscommunication quickly dissipated. Suddenly, a wave of trepidation washed over me. The hair on my flesh stood to attention. And before I could do anything to remove myself from the situation, clammy, ginormous hands gripped my shoulders. I screamed in terror as an unseen man with twice or thrice the strength of me hauled my squirming body into a dark, featureless room. I was forced to hand over my mobile phone, bank card, and any other valuable possessions. And that was the start of my new life in Myanmar. They housed me in a den of iron sheets, along with a dozen other shivering, malnourished victims. With every gust of icy wind that rippled across the iron, we whimpered in terror, frightened that the next creak of the door might not be the wind, but one of our captors. Our jobs involved online fraud, and any moral qualms I had about deceiving innocent people were quickly swept out of my mind, as I watched one woman, refusing to work, who was brutally beaten by half a dozen men of frighteningly large stature. They forced her to sign a work contract that, in the end, resulted in her freedom being constricted beyond that of the victims who simply complied from the beginning. She achieved nothing but bloody, bruised skin and limited daylight. She still, like all of us, had to work. Everybody works, one way or the other. I chose the safer way. It was, perhaps, the first smart decision I'd made since recovering from my gambling addiction. But it didn't matter. Even those of us who worked hard were punished for meaningless trivialities. Completing our work a few minutes too late, or completing our work more slowly than our colleagues. And the punishment was constant, day in and day out. A ceaseless cycle of torture. My esteemed colleagues were dragged to a horrid room that we called the chamber. Just the word on my mouth, even after all of this time, fills me with a deep, relentless sickness. The electric shocks were the second worst punishment. For the briefest moment, every single time it happened, I thought I might die. My body would spasm in such unfathomable pain that I truly believed it to be my end. The worst punishment was one of emotional pain. Eventually, memories of physical pain fades, but the trauma of a particular day stays with me. It haunts me every waking hour. The day on which I failed to seal the deal on a potential online victim. My manager dragged me, crying, into the courtyard, and there, she stripped me bare, before proceeding to whip me across my body. But it isn't the scars that haunt me. Not even the excruciating pain of the whip tearing into my skin. It's the shame of it all. The humiliation that they could take what little dignity I had left. Many more mistakes followed. I endured countless torture, physical punishments, threats of kidneys being sold, and even, eventually, being passed from fraudulent company to fraudulent company. But when I finally seized my chance to flee, I expended every ounce of energy that I had left in me. My feet were bare and bloody from running across rocks, gravel, and dirt. A guard spotted me. Fortunately, he was unarmed, and he pursued me relentlessly. But my will was greater than that of my captor. I was locked in survival mode, and there was no physical pain on earth that could have prevented me from pushing forwards. I would have kept running until my very last breath. And so, fortunately, my captor gave up. He turned around and, most likely, found another victim to replace me on that very same day. Eventually, I made it across the river to Thailand. I tasted freedom. And yet, part of me remains in Myanmar, a part that I know I shall never reclaim. This cautionary tale most likely sent a shiver down your spine, and perhaps that is due, in part, to the haunting reality of such heinous crimes in Myanmar. Reality is often scarier than fiction. If you or a loved one plans on taking a trip to this country, it is of vital importance that you conduct sufficient research before doing so. Ensure that you are well aware of the risks and have taken the necessary precautions to ensure the safety of those who are planning on traveling. If seeking employment in Myanmar, ensure that you have conducted thorough checks into the background of potential employers.
I first noticed him in the McDonald's drive-thru. I'd collect my order. I was driving away, and I happened to glance in my rear view mirror. The man in the car behind me was wearing a full Ronald McDonald costume, and I might have found that slightly amusing or eye-rolling worthy if it hadn't been for the fact that he was watching me. And I mean really watching me, intently, with unblinking eyes. I gulped as I slowly drove away, too frightened to peel my gaze away from the rearview mirror, as the clown continued to eyeball me from his driver's seat, seemingly ignoring the cashier who was trying to talk to him. My family found the whole ordeal hilarious when I relayed it back to them, and had tried to see the funny side of it, viewing the incident as an isolated thing, possibly some drunken partygoer's prank to unsettle a fellow driver. There was nothing insidious about the situation, so why didn't that explanation sit well with me? About a month later, I received a flyer through the letterbox, a flyer for McDonald's, and it was offering £100,000 to any customer who could solve a simple riddle. What glides but has no wings? You receive a McDonald's flyer in 2023? My son, Rick, asked, laughing. I don't think that's official, Dad. No one delivers flyers anymore. Frankie's shop does, my wife insisted, taking the flyer from my hands. Rick rolled his eyes. Yeah, Frankie's shop, not McDonald's, a multi-billion-pound restaurant chain. It's probably a scam, Dad. Ignore it. I sighed. Yeah, you're probably right. And quick Google search debunked the entire thing. So in the bin it went. And I didn't even think about the fast food chain for another couple of months. I took the kids there whilst my wife was on a night out. I thought you were going to cook some fish and chips for us, Cindy, my daughter said. When have you ever seen Dad cooking? Rick laughed. I don't know why either of you are sassing me, I said. It's McDonald's. Isn't that what your kids love? Or would you rather I pull the "we have McDonald's at home" card? Yeah, that's what you find funny, right? Please don't try doing memes, Dad, Cindy shuddered. Yeah, it's a bad look, Boomer, Rick added. Boomer? I said, I'm 39 for crying out loud. We clambered out of the car and made our way into the restaurant, and while I ordered, Cindy rushed to the bathroom. The food had already arrived before she returned. What's taking her so long? I sighed. Girl stuff, Rick shrugged, tucking into his burger. Thanks for that intelligent sight, son, I said, standing up. I'm gonna go. Oh, there, she's done. Skipping gleefully towards us, my daughter waved a Happy Meal in her hands. Where did you get that? I cried. Your food is on the table. You didn't take that off the counter, did you? No, Dad, Cindy said, chuckling as she sat down with us. Ronald gave it to me. I sighed. Another one of your pranks, eh? Are you in on this together? Rick held up his hands. Don't look at me, big man. The kid's crazy. Okay, Rick, calm down and eat your burger. Cindy, where did you get that meal? I asked sternly. I told you, Ronald gave it to me, she insisted. That's not funny, Cindy, I said. If you've taken that box from the counter, then give it back. If you found it on the bathroom floor or something, then throw it away and eat the food I got you. Please, children, you're driving me crazy. This was meant to be a treat. Cindy sighed, opening up the box. Relax, Dad. I have room for both meals. My daughter's face suddenly whitened as she peered inside. and I snatched the Happy Meal away to find something sickening. A severed ring finger, and I recognized the wedding band, 21/02/2012, the date of my wedding. Bundling the children into the car, I frantically called my wife, but she wasn't picking up the phone. "What's wrong, Dad?" Rick said. Cindy threw up. "What was in the box, Cindy?" he asked. "Don't answer that question," I barked as Cindy wiped the vomit from her lips. "We're going straight to the police station to keep you safe, and..." Great. The car wouldn't budge. It started, but it felt as if it was stuck in quicksand, and the sinking feeling in my gut was confirmed when I clambered out of the car, finding all 4 of the tires punctured. I looked around at the empty car park, realizing that we were a solid mile out of town, and I wasn't taking my kids on foot in the dark. "Okay, I guess I'll call them now," I said, dialing 999. Everything turned to black as the phone rang, and when it came around, my head was throbbing. I'd been bludgeoned with something, and I woke atop a multi-story car park, tied to a chair. And before me, screaming for help from my car, were my 2 children and my wife, and the vehicle was inching towards the edge of the high-rise car park. "What glides but has no wings?" a voice whispered. Eyes hazy and body aching, I turned to see a man in a full clown costume. Ronald McDonald. He was grinning with that same demented look in his eyes as a few months prior. Please, I begged, wriggling my restraints. "Let my family go. Answer the riddle," the clown cackled. I don't know," I screamed, watching in horror as the car tumbled over the edge. "There's your answer," Ronald roared triumphantly as the vehicle plummeted with a deafening crash. The manic man giggled into the night as he fled the scene, and it was an hour later that it was found by emergency workers responding to a car about a car wreckage at the bottom of the multi-story building. My family perished, and Ronald was never seen again. My name's Melissa, and I used to work at McDonald's. The story of not the restaurant itself, but a customer called. "Dave," the man whispered softly. "The name's Dave." He was an attractive man, beautiful smile, muscular build, and bright blue eyes. I might have actually liked him if it hadn't been for his personality. You see, he wasn't the first man to flirt with me, and that isn't a humble brag. It's a fact of life that women spend a healthy chunk of their time swatting off advances from unknown men. But the idea that we let it slide when the men are handsome, that's just nonsense. This guy unsettled me from the very beginning. Perhaps it might have been the way his unblinking eyes bore holes through my own as he offered his name unprompted. It might have been what came next. "Okay, Dave," I said, smiling uncomfortably. "Your order number is 13. The number of days I will wait for you." He moaned, winking at me. I felt a little vomit rise in my throat, but I suppressed it, offering what I deemed to be the politest smile possible. Something that wouldn't antagonize the man, but also shouldn't suggest any sort of interest with him. The plight of being a woman. As it would transpire, no message I would have given could have deterred Dave. I asked one of my colleagues to take over for me, as I didn't want to interact with the unhinged gentleman again when he would collect his order. Ryan smiled and nodded, offering me a comforting look and a quiet promise that he would put Dave in his place, should the man make any additional comments. "Do you know the name of that ravishing woman?" Dave asked Ryan. "She's not interested, sir. Thank you for ordering at McDonald's. No need to be rude," Dave interrupted, losing a little of his charm. "I can see her hiding back there. Are you her boyfriend or something? Bodyguard?" "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. There are other customers waiting to be, and they will carry on waiting," Dave growled. "Just give me her name." The manager, Sandra, caught wind of the situation and escorted Dave off the premises, under threat of the police being called, but the whole situation shook me up. "Are you okay?" Sandra asked. I nodded. "Yep." "Are you sure? You look a little pale," Sandra frowned. "I can get someone else to cover your shift if you..." "I'm fine," I lied. "I need the money, Sandra. I'll keep working. It'll take my mind off of it." Sandra sighed. "Okay, well, he's gone now. Give me a heads up if he comes back. I won't hesitate to call the police. Thanks, Sandra, I said, returning to work. Ryan helped carry some of the load during my shift, and people kept checking on me to ensure that I hadn't been too badly shaken up. They were all very sweet, and plenty of my coworkers sympathized. We'd all had bad experiences like that before. It was nothing new, unfortunately, but the hair on the back of my neck was still standing to attention an hour or so later. I couldn't seem to get the adrenaline to flood from my body. I was stuck in a state of panic. Want me to walk you home? Ryan asked at the end of our shifts. I smiled. That's very kind, but it's half an hour out of your way. I don't mind. It means I get a little more exercise than usual, he said. I laughed. We need to get cars, don't we? Can barely afford a bus pass on this salary, Ryan said. I heard that, Sandra huffed from the distance. Love you, Sandra, Ryan shouted, turning to me as I giggled. Come on, let's get out of here. It's been a long shift. The tightness in my chest unknotted a little as Ryan walked me home. I put the earlier horror of the night out of my head a little, though I wish I hadn't. A rustling in the bushes startled me, but I ignored it, transfixed by Ryan's funny story. He had a way of effortlessly putting me at ease. He always had. I didn't know why we both danced around the obvious. We liked each other, and we both knew it. So silly, especially in retrospect. And then I squinted my eyes a little, channeling my inner Chris Evans, he said, flexing his muscles. I laughed. Okay, Captain London. Ouch. Not even Captain Britain? Ryan grasped. I'm not sure Captain America ever spent time fighting creepy men in restaurants, but I'm happy you're a small-town hero, caring about the little guy, I said, winking. You're more than a little guy to me. Wait, no, that came out weirdly. What I mean to say, wait, did you hear that? Ryan asked, stopping in his tracks. Hear what? I asked, frustrated that Ryan had swerved the question I had been hoping he'd ask for months. It sounded like whistling, Ryan said, twisting his head to the bushes. Wait, oh my, Sammy, run. I didn't see what he saw until it was too late. The man leapt from the bushes and pushed Ryan into the road. I screamed, falling backwards, and watching as the two men scuffled in the road. I dipped my hand into my pocket, produced my phone, and rang 999. The police station was less than a mile away, and they promised they'd hurry, but I could only watch in horror as the large man overpowered Ryan, a scrawny teenager about 10 years younger than him. It all ended in seconds, a horrifying display of brutish villainy. The man's foot stomped down on Ryan's skull, squashing it as if it were a rotten piece of fruit. I shrieked in terror as the man turned his attention to me. He offered that ever-charming, ever-terrifying smile, just as calm as unfaltering as it had been in a McDonald's. Sammy, he groaned, panting like a wild animal. You and I shall make the most beautiful babies. We will. Dave stopped speaking and turned to face the blue and red lights approaching from the far end of the road. Shrieking like some alien creature, he sprinted into the foliage beside the road and disappeared into the night. He was never caught by police officers. To this day, I live in fear of him finding me.
This quarantine made me question a lot of life decisions I made. Back in February, when this all started, I was working 2 jobs, living with my best friend Lexi, and enjoying the high life. Then we got thrown into lockdown, and I swear, Lexi changed immediately. She was so serious about all of the virus restrictions that even when I was in the house, I had to wear a mask. Anyway, after one particular argument about washing my clothes 3 times, once for normal wash, once on heavy, and once a 3rd time just to be safe, I had enough and told her I was going to move out. That was dumb move number 1. I was already out of work, waiting, and hoping for unemployment and really didn't have a place to go. My parents are elderly and live 2 states away, so I wasn't going to risk that. Then I got the brilliant idea to post an ad that I needed a room to rent on Craigslist. Yeah, that still exists, and it's still just as sleazy. Lexi forced me to move out that same day, though, calling me all sorts of bad names as she tossed my stuff on her front lawn. I didn't even get a chance to argue. So, yeah, desperate times called for desperate measures, and I put an ad out on Facebook too with a revealing picture of myself. Call me what you will, but it worked. This older gentleman responded to the ad and contacted me via email. The short message provided me with a small allowance for my gas and instructions on how to get into his apartment when I got there. I didn't ask any questions, although looking back on it, I really should have. You know that saying about too good to be true? Anyway, I grabbed a bite to eat and made it there right around 5:30 on foot to save a taxi fee. Place looked nice enough, and I followed his instructions to get buzzed in. He lived on the 6th floor and explained that because of some medical condition he couldn't meet me in the lobby. Again, stupid me, I didn't ask questions. As he had told me in the email, there was a key waiting for me under his doormat. Inside, the place looked nice, well put together. Nothing that made me paranoid or feel the need to run. Then, I saw this guy standing in the kitchen wearing, I kid you not, a kabuki mask. At first, I laughed because of how bizarre it was. He said his name was Hano, and he wanted to keep the mask on because of the quarantine and provided me with one. Next few minutes were him rambling about the different things in the apartment, and he showed me to the room. This is where things got a little creepy. I saw that he had some mannequins on display that were wearing traditional Japanese kimono dresses with other kabuki, and they were all lined perfectly on the side of the bed. He insisted I pick one out and get changed. Again, his reasoning was my clothing had the virus on it. Once he excused himself, I sat down on the bed and tried to convince myself this was normal. So he was a little eccentric. It's not like he was trying to do something worse than that, right? I went over to one of the mannequins. I think it was wearing a scarlet kimono, and took off the clothing, figuring that I needed to suck it up and appreciate the kindness of strangers. Then the mask it was wearing accidentally fell off, and I noticed that there was a hand-painted face on the other side. It looked very realistic. Once I got finished changing, I went back to the main room where he was now cooking us a fresh meal, and he complimented me on how well the dress fit. I thanked him and casually mentioned the hand painting. "Would you like me to do one of you?" he asked. "But you only saw me when I first came in," I pointed out, gesturing to the mask I was wearing. "It's all right. I've already memorized you," he said. I told him no, and we ate in awkward silence as my eyes glanced around the room. I think the first thing that really made me concerned was when I realized I didn't see an open window in the place, and that the door had a deadbolt on it. "Do you get a lot of break-ins?" I asked him. And again, in a deadpan voice, he said, "More often than not, it's the other way around." Then a few seconds later, he laughed, and I laughed back nervously. He told me that he was going to bed and thanked me again for staying with him, but I really didn't feel like I wanted to now. "Hey, I forgot to go grab my phone charger out in the car. Where is the spare key?" I remember asking. I was just looking for an excuse to get out of there, honestly. This dude had an answer for everything, and this time used my own words against me. "Crime is bad and it's getting late. You can borrow one of mine and go in the morning." Now, I may not be smart, but I knew that staying probably would mean something bad. I got a sixth sense about it, you know? "I have an iPhone. I think you've got Samsung," I said, hoping that my feeling was wrong and that he wasn't being overly creepy. Again, a dead stare and serious voice. "You're not leaving." He said something in Japanese a second after that and clapped his hands. I don't know why I never noticed he had some of those sensor lights, and it got dark in the room a second later. My instinct was to scream, but he placed something over my mouth and I felt immediately faint. But somehow I managed to not black out, and I elbowed him right in the gut. Everything happened so fast after that. I turned around and grabbed what I think was his head and demanded that he tell me where the key was. I felt something smash against my side. I think I kicked him and managed to hit the wall where the light switch was. I flipped it back on and saw he had fallen over the couch, and one of his ornate antiques had smashed. To my thanks, it was also where the spare key was hiding. I grabbed it up and ran to the door as I heard him cuss something in his native tongue again, but I never looked back. When I got downstairs, I told the lobby I needed an Uber. I didn't care about money. I just wanted to leave. I saw the elevator moving downward as I raced out the door, and maybe it was my mind playing tricks on me, but I heard Hano asking the receptionist where I went. When I got far enough away from his apartment, I texted Lexi and begged her to let me back with her. I promised I would never complain about all her quarantine rules even. I told Lexi the whole thing, and she did a little digging, and the icing on top of this creepy cake is that the guy apparently has been doing this for some time. Apparently, he would target young women that were either trying to get out of a bad relationship or family situation and promise free rent, but then turn out to be a total creep, watching them night and day when they stayed with him. 2 of the women Lexi said had gone completely missing. It made me think of those weird mannequins, and I wondered if maybe the paintings he did were tributes to victims of his sick mind. I didn't want to think about how he had likely researched about me in the same way, and how easily I could have wound up on that missing persons list. The roughest calls we get as 911 operators are when it's a kid at a local school making a bomb threat or saying they're going to shoot somebody. 9 times out of 10, these calls are just pranks, and it winds up with a teen getting a stern talking to and then suspended from the school for a few days. I wasn't having a great day already before the call, so when I got it and there wasn't any tracking info, I assumed it was a prank before the conversation even started. "What is your emergency?" I asked without opening up my desktop. I admit it, I wasn't alert of the danger. "I'm in a school, and someone here is trying to kill me and my classmates," the timid voice told me. I thought I heard laughter in the background. "All right, and what's the name of the school you're at?" I asked, leaning forward to grab a bagel from my snack drawer. My attention was a million miles away. "I don't know," they admitted. I tried my best to roll my eyes. "You don't know? Well, how did you get to the school?" I asked. "I woke up here. I think I was drugged. The school looks mostly abandoned," they said. "And you just happened to find a working phone?" I said skeptically. Their story wasn't adding up. "I found it from the corpse of our teacher. They tried to fight back and whoever is holding us here killed them," the kid told me. "Your teacher was kidnapped too?" I asked. "Yes. Please, can you send help?" they asked. I typed up the notes and told them to describe their surroundings. "All I know is that I'm in a gymnasium and the windows and doors are all blocked. Like I said, the school looks so old. Dust and cobwebs everywhere," they told me. I asked for a name and they told me Will. I decided since the day was pretty slow, I was going to play along and asked Will if he could get outside the gym. "Only to the basement. I snuck out to use the restroom and make this call. I'm worried if that psycho finds out I have this phone, he will..." "Hold. Wait, someone is coming," they replied. I paused for a second as I heard bathroom doors shuffling. At first, I assumed it was just a teacher coming to find out why this kid was taking so long in the bathroom. Then I heard what sounded like a scuffle. The phone dropped and I heard something like a scream. Suddenly, I wasn't sure this was a prank anymore, but I didn't act yet. There have been plenty of times kids have gone much farther than this to get a good laugh. The phone line went silent for a few moments and I dared to call out to Will. Then a new voice, an older male, picked up the phone. "Everything is fine, officers. We'll just manage to sneak into my teacher's desk and nab my phone. My fault for not paying attention and not keeping it locked," they said. But something deep down told me that I couldn't just let it slide. "Just for our documents, we're going to need a little more information before you go, sir," I said. I wanted to sound like I had the authority to come and break their doors down, but truthfully I didn't have a clue where they even were. "Certainly. This is Mr. Brown. I'm a substitute over at the elementary today. Last days of school are so hectic," they said. Then they hung up the phone. I chewed on my pen, trying to decide if I believed their answer. I got up and went to the recording room and asked if they could play the audio back. "We haven't had much chance to review things today. Is it urgent, Tom?" my coworker asked. I told them the situation and they pulled the tapes, all of us trying to determine the location that Will was talking about. "Might be the old high school across the river?" my supervisor asked. Just to be safe, we sent dispatch to the elementary as well. I waited to hear something from the dispatch, hoping that my first guess about this being a prank was correct. I didn't want kids to get hurt. The first elementary told us that everything was fine, but there were no substitutes today. Same went for the 2 other grade schools in this area. We hit the high school last. I called dispatch and listened as they raided the old building. "This place is so creepy, Tom. Literally no one here," they said. I was a little relieved, but also frustrated. The prank had been intricate, and once again, our resources were wasted. Hold on. I think there's a basement, the dispatch said. I held my breath. Then I heard an explosion. I dropped the phone and grabbed my hair, trying to not panic. Had my coworker just died? The emergency line called again. "What is your emergency?" I said, trying to sound calm. I was so eager to call dispatch and make sure everything was okay. "Hello? It's Will again. I know where I am." "What? The old school? Did a bomb go off?" I asked. "No, nothing like that happened here. I was wrong about it being a school. It's a theater. And they just killed one of my friends." I called another patrol officer to give the information and told Will I had to switch him to a different operator. I was unable to focus as I realized the old school was a trap. When I got in touch with the dispatchers there, they gave the bad news. The basement had been laced with explosives. 2 of my colleagues were dead. A pit was forming in my stomach as I heard over the walkie-talkie that dispatch was getting to the theater where Will claimed they were being held. A dark thought raced through my head. "Does that property have a basement?" I asked. "Yeah, the blueprint says it does. You think the kids are down there?" "No, I think it's a trap. This place will blow if anyone goes downstairs," I said. There was a bit of an argument about what to do when Will called again. "Hey, is your team coming? Another one of my friends got shot." Will's tone was different. He sounded older. "Can I talk to your teacher? The person holding you hostage?" I asked. "No, he doesn't know I got this phone again. I'm on the roof. I can see the water tower. I think that I'm by the old railroad," they told me. "And I think you're lying. You've sent my team to 2 different locations and nearly killed them all," I said evenly. "No, please, you have to help me," Will said. It was bizarre how weird he changed his tone. "Will, can you do me a favor and turn up the volume on your phone?" I asked. I listened and then hung up and ran to the audio room. "Enhance the final 10 seconds, I told them. We heard airplanes, and I knew instantly that Will and his friends were there. I called dispatch to get away from the theater. Thankfully, they didn't trigger the explosion. We all held our breath as they reached the airport. At first, there was nothing to be found. Then, dispatch reported that there was a bus sitting there with the driver and teacher dead. "Oh God, and where are the kids?" I asked desperately. They stormed the warehouses next. They found one of the children tied up next to an old World War II jet plane. "I tried to stop them. I told them this was too far," they said. I was listening to the conversation, but I didn't understand what it meant. "Who is doing all of this?" I heard the patrol officer ask. "Will. He's been trying to kill all of us and everyone that he can." I heard gunfire in the distance. Will was making his last stand. I heard them shout for him to stand down, but that didn't happen. It was clear he wanted the cops to take him down. When the dust cleared, they found out that he had taken his class hostage and planted several explosives around town, all because he felt he was ignored. We spent the rest of the week finding the explosives. The notes we found on his laptop claimed there were 5 around town. We only ever found 4, and that terrifies me the most. My neighbors keep calling 911 on me. At first, when it happened, my wife and I admittedly were in the middle of a heated argument. Nothing serious. We weren't threatening each other or anything, but when the 2 first responders showed up to see if everything was okay, you can bet I was embarrassed. Meredith, my wife, was honestly more concerned that we would be fined by the city for causing disorder in the neighborhood than the person that called 911. Apparently, we were the problem here, not them. The police gave us a stern lecture to keep our volume down while we worked out our problems. Apparently, there's a noise ordinance that we didn't know about. Meredith and I politely and calmly agreed we would listen. And as soon as the police were gone, my wife told me I needed to figure out which one of our neighbors had an issue with our little tirade. I mean, by that time, we had forgotten what the argument was even about. Now we had a mutual enemy. This neighbor that apparently thought we were causing a disturbance to the peace of our community. It didn't take a rocket scientist to realize it was probably the ones right next door. We hadn't been that loud, so the quaint brick house with the 1970s architecture told me that our neighbors were likely an older couple that believed any loud outburst was a reason to call the police. I knocked on the door, remained polite, and introduced myself. We had just moved in only a month prior and didn't really know anyone yet. I really appreciated your concern earlier, but it wasn't necessary to call 911. Everything is fine. We are fine. The man I talked to called himself Arthur, and apparently he and his wife Betsy were babysitting their youngest grandson Eli. Arthur's attitude implied to me that he felt we were a nuisance, and I wasn't entirely sure my calm demeanor would change his mind. And it didn't. Less than 2 weeks later, I was on my way out the door to work when I was stopped by another officer who told me they got another call about us. There's apparently been a report someone was using a firearm nearby, the officer asked. I realized Arthur was calling it in out of spite again. I apologized as much as I could get out of a ticket and marched over to have a talk with my neighbor. Next time, please before you call 911, just call me instead and we can handle it decently, I told him. This time, he feigned innocence and said his wife did it. I urged him to pass the message along to her, but that didn't happen. Instead, a week later, there was yet another instance where 911 was called and thought there was a problem. I can't even remember what their issue was, to be honest, and this time I tried to reason with the officers and tell them I was being harassed. I pay my taxes, I keep my yard clean, I don't have any problems with any other neighbors, just them, I said. Of course they said I should go downtown to file an official report, but I doubted that would put a stop to this behavior. The next time I saw Betsy, I confronted her and asked why they were constantly calling 911. Look, I get that we started off on the wrong foot here. I guess we could have been better neighbors. But what you're doing is downright awful. If you don't stop, I will file a complaint, I told her. This time, she blamed her husband, claiming she knew nothing about it. I hated the fact they were merely passing blame back and forth between each other. Then one afternoon, I saw Eli coming out of the garage to toss trash away, and I decided maybe the best way to resolve this issue was just being friendly. Visiting your grandparents again? I asked pleasantly. He was there quite a lot. He darted his eyes and raced back inside, not bothering to reply. His odd behavior puzzled me, and I asked Meredith if she had ever seen Eli's parents. I just assume that the old couple takes care of him. Maybe something terrible happened to them, and those folks are all he has left now, Meredith told me. The next time I saw him, I knew the first thing I wanted to ask was about the 911 calls. Your grandparents have been pestering us a lot. I'm not sure what their goal is, but if it continues, they could get in a lot of trouble, I warned. That did the trick because his eyes got big and worried, and he admitted he was the one that called 911. Each and every time, he claimed it was just out of boredom, and since he looked so frightened, I didn't lecture him. I figured that since I had solved this mystery, that meant Eli would stop pulling this prank. Just to be sure, though, when I saw Arthur the next day, I apologized. You might want to give that grandson of yours a stern talk, though. 911 isn't a children's toy. The old man seemed genuinely surprised that it was Eli and promised me he would take care of it. I didn't get any more phone calls or unexpected visits from police after that, and for a while I thought that was a good thing until Meredith pointed out the obvious. Ever since you complained about Eli, I haven't seen him, she said. I paid more attention to our neighbors after that for the next few days and realized she was right. Eli was nowhere to be seen. I told myself that there were a variety of reasons why Eli wasn't out or visible, but none of them made sense. Finally, I did something I didn't expect I would do and actually called 911 on Arthur and Betsy. It was bizarre, given our rocky relationship, but I am so glad I did. I watched from our front window as the police asked them questions and then proceeded to search the house. The old couple had been lying again because about 5 minutes later, I saw them putting Eli out on a stretcher. His whole face was bruises from where it was obvious he had been struck. I gasped and ran outside to get in a hurry to ask questions. I wasn't sure I wanted answers. Eli had tried to off himself, officers claimed, and apparently he had been the one calling 911 all those times. It had been a cry for help from a young boy that didn't want to get caught by his grandparents. Arthur and Betsy beat him, starved him, and apparently they were only keeping him for the money that they got from child support. Police even suspected that the two were responsible for the death of Eli's parents. I went to visit him in the hospital, glad to see that he was recovering. He apologized a lot, something I'm guessing that he did a lot for his grandparents. I told him it was fine, but maybe next time to try and get help for himself rather than pulling pranks. I had confidence that the doctors and nurses would handle taking care of Eli while I returned home to make sure the neighbors were taken care of too. On the way home, I got a call from dispatch. For some reason, Meredith was calling 911, they told me. Apparently, the report said that she was being threatened by our neighbors with a firearm. We aren't planning to come this time since there's no threat, the dispatcher told me. As soon as I heard that, I sped home. When I found her dead inside the house with a gunshot to the head, she was still gasping for breath. I tried to call 911 at least 10 times, but they recognized the number. They didn't believe this was anything besides self-harm. They didn't come, and I lost everything.
I knew this job was going to be bad when, during the interview, a robbery happened. The manager had to get a baseball bat from under the counter and scared a thug away. And when I didn't run, he said I was hired. These jobs are typically temporary anyway. I won't be mad if you're gone in a couple of weeks. To be honest, I was more worried about making it to payday alive. The convenience store was located on the bad side of town. I probably could have gotten a better job if I wanted to walk a little bit farther. But I just wanted enough money to buy my first car. That's all I really wanted. I didn't know that these few months at the 7-Eleven would wind up changing my life forever. The next day after the robbery, the owner had me come in around 9 in the morning to learn how to work the cashier and where the safe was at. He warned me that the robbery I experienced the night before wasn't just a coincidence. We've been hit fairly regularly over the past few weeks. Gangs are getting bolder. I don't know why they target us, but it's just happening, and you need to be prepared for it. Then he showed me where the weapons were. Honestly, when I saw the guns, it felt like this owner was ready to go to war against these gangs. And he told me I needed to do whatever was necessary to protect his business. He showed me a small stairwell that led to a bunker and explained that if there was ever an emergency where I needed to hide, call him and he would open it up. I guess that was where he kept the majority of his goods, since the store was on a slope, and I knew I saw a loading dock on the other side where the alley was at. I didn't know why he thought a freezer was a good spot to hide, but I obeyed his rules anyway. So I got started that very same day. I had the shift until 2 o'clock, and honestly it was pretty easy. I was even convincing myself that this wasn't going to be so bad. That delusion shattered the moment that I heard gunshots outside the store. Gang members would speed into the parking lot and do massive circles around the pump on their motorcycles. They pointed machine guns at each other and let bullets fly mercilessly as they laughed and then rode off on the lot again. The owner had been smart enough to get bulletproof glass, but I wasn't sure how long that would last given the damage. Once things settled down, I told myself it was just an isolated incident. But then the next day, things got so much worse. It was just about halfway through my shift when 2 young men stepped into the store wearing typical gang colors and holding machine guns above their heads like they were torches. I stood still behind the counter, trying not to feel intimidated by their posture and threats. They demanded that I let them into the safe downstairs, pointing the gun straight at my face and saying they would blow me to kingdom come if I didn't comply. I think what I said was probably the bravest thing I've ever done. Gentlemen, I know you want to rob me, but honestly you came at the wrong time. We've just finished emptying everything in the basement. You're wasting your time today, I told them. The 2 of them gave each other a surprised look and kept threatening me, but then they heard gunfire outside the store and got spooked. Apparently, another gang was somewhere nearby and they were out for blood. The 2 thugs got spooked and ran out the front door, jumped in their car and drove off. I think I probably passed out from the sheer adrenaline, I'm not sure. When I finally stopped zoning out, I called the owner and told him what happened. You did a good job, Martin. In fact, I'm going to reward you with more responsibility and a raise. Tomorrow, I will give you a key to the basement and loading dock, and you can assist with shipments down there, he told me. I was actually feeling pretty confident about the change in circumstances. The owner trusted me, and I didn't even feel like I would be scared by gang members again. I was on cloud 9 until the next day. The owner stopped by in the morning and gave me the key, explaining that the trucks came by every couple of days to pick up and drop off, and I would need to sign for everything. The owner was apparently getting ready to go on vacation. I really shouldn't have been so eager to do such menial labor, and I should have asked more questions. Instead, like a fool, I took the key and started working through the normal tasks like stocking shelves and cleaning the floors. There weren't very many customers, and it was hard to stay focused. I kept thinking about the basement and how I was intrigued by the fact that the owner was stashing cash down there. It sounded a little illegal and sketchy, but also incredibly tempting to see what was down there. After another hour of mental debates, I gave in and decided to check out the basement firsthand. I first locked the front door and switched the open sign to closed. I stood at the top of the stairs for a few seconds, telling myself that this was a bad idea. If the owner found out I was snooping, my job would be toast. But if he was doing something illegal, he couldn't get me in trouble without ratting himself out too. I reasoned as I walked to the bottom of the stairs. I opened the door and found myself initially disappointed. There were freezers and storage boxes, nothing out of the ordinary. Then I opened a freezer and found myself trying not to scream as I saw a dead body inside. I slammed the door closed and ran back upstairs. I grabbed a chest and ran to the counter, trying not to freak out. I should have called 911. I should have gotten out of there. Instead, when I calmed down, I found myself walking back to the freezer to gather evidence. I took pictures of everything. My heart was pounding as I found freezers full of body parts. There were at least 5 people here that had been killed. And as I got a closer look, I realized that all of them belonged to the same gang as the 2 men that were threatening me the other day. Is that why they had come to the store? Because of the owner killing their own members? I suddenly felt that I was being watched. Then I turned around and saw 2 gang members from an opposing gang entering from the loading docks. They pointed their weapons at me and demanded I help load the trucks up. I didn't dare argue. I kept my head down and watched as they loaded freezers. "Where is this stuff going?" I dared to ask. "Across the river. The boss has a few other businesses that use this type of meat," the first man said. I found myself wanting to puke. They were selling these dead bodies like it was lunch meat. It occurred to me, though, that the gangs might not even know what they were doing, and I decided to make a split-second decision and pretended to drop one of the crates. The box splintered open and organs fell on the tile floor. The 2 thugs shouted in surprise, pointing their weapons at the guts and then at me. "What is all this?" the second man asked. I said nothing, watching as the 2 men abruptly stopped loading the truck and checked the other freezers, discovering the boxes. "Did you know about this?" the first man asked. I pretended that I didn't. They told me to scram, and at this time I didn't hesitate. I ran all the way home. That night, I kept debating what to do. I called the police and told them what I knew and offered to show pictures, but they didn't seem all that interested in gang members being killed. The next morning, it didn't matter what I did though, because the store had been burned down. I wasn't sure which gang was responsible for the crime, but any evidence of the bodies was gone. And of course, I was fired when I called the owner and reported the fire. He claimed it was because he couldn't pay me, but the tone of his voice told me a different story. He knew that I found out about his secret and he was angry. So, even though that job lasted less than 2 weeks, I am certain that the owner and the people he works with are all still after me.
I am not proud of the fact that I often go to the seediest corners of the internet to look for entertainment. Pirates Bay, Tor websites, dark web forums, all of this is my bread and butter. There are simply so many creative minds that find a way to bring me to levels of fun and interactivity I can't find elsewhere. There was one recent game, though, that was more complex than any I had ever seen simply by presentation alone. The developer called it Mannequin, and the ad hooked me instantly. Most games promise immersion, but few deliver it. Our advanced artificial intelligence algorithm promises to make your life a part of the game by viewing your web history and piecing together a game tailored for you, made by your interests. It sounded phenomenal and groundbreaking, so I charged my PayPal and decided to give it a try. According to the software, it said it would need the next 10 hours to review my entire search history, and then the game would be ready. I figured that since I needed to sleep anyway, it would be a perfect way to start the weekend. When my alarm went off, it felt like I was stumbling out of bed. I slept harder than usual, I thought, as I looked around my dark room and tried to remember where my closet was at. Yeah, I had definitely slept too much because I immediately felt disoriented. I crossed the room to get dressed, my mind still a fog, when the lights behind me came on and I realized I was not alone. No, I don't have a roommate. but standing there in my doorway was a fully dressed man chowing down on a donut. "Morning, Mike. Are you ready to run the gauntlet?" they asked. It was then I realized that this wasn't my bedroom at all. It resembled some kind of prison cell with drab walls and bland sheets. My roommate was also apparently wearing a typical orange jumpsuit with a number stitched into it. My brain fumbled for a second before I realized this had to be part of the game, and I asked him, "Who are you? Where am I?" "Don't act all surprised, Mike. You're the one that downloaded this. You wanted this," he said as he led me down the corridor to a large auditorium. The larger room reminded me of some kind of gladiator's arena where below our feet I saw two people fighting each other tooth and nail. "This is just a bad dream, right? I mean, this can't be real," I said nervously as I looked above us and saw a constant stream of strange purple light. Was I inside the dark web itself? Some kind of bizarre computer world? That was impossible, wasn't it? "Look, I wish I had time to explain, but it's nearly year-round. Once you win, maybe you can get the answers you need," they told me. Suddenly, the floor beneath my feet gave way, and I slid down a long silver slide until I tumbled into the arena. My opponent looked like an equally confused middle-aged dude that had been given a scimitar to fight with. Above us, the klaxon alarm went off, and I ran to hide behind one of the large boulders, my heart pounding. Part of me wanted to believe this was some weird fever dream, but everything was happening so quickly I knew it had to be real. Somehow, the game had taken me here to this private arena as a contestant. It made me wonder who were the people making bets on our lives. A second later, another weapon dropped from the bridge above, a short, twisted dagger that I'm guessing had to be laced with some kind of poison. I ran to grab it and then faced my opponent as bravely as I could. I could tell they weren't the fighting type, but then again, neither was I. All of this felt new. It felt off to even be doing this at all. But I wasn't about to die here on the floor of this weird arena because of a stupid dark web game. So I gripped my blade as hard as I could and ran toward the man. As soon as the metal hit his chest, I saw his eyes bulge out and he gasped for breath. A loud cheer from an unseen crowd told me that I had won. Then several men in black uniform raced out to sedate me and separate me before I could check to see if the man I had attacked was actually dead. As the sedative took effect, I fell asleep and heard a few stray voices talk over me. "This candidate has a lot more zest than the last few. He could be a good supplier," they said. "Is the download complete?" "Almost. We will run the final test now." I felt a sharp prick behind my ear and woke with a start, back in my own normal room again. I went to check the download status of the game and discovered that the server was saying now that there was a system update. For some reason, that made me think maybe it really had been a bad dream. I went to work, bought groceries, and had a fairly normal day after that, all the while thinking about the strange dream and the realism of it. I was convincing myself that none of it had really happened. But when I got back home and checked online, I discovered all too quickly that was a misconception on my part. As it turned out, the game update was an exact replica of the events from my time in the arena. Now players across the globe could pay to play as me and relive the experience I just had killing that innocent man. I felt my stomach twist into knots as I realized the whole game was some sort of trap to make virtual reality a kill sport. And they had sent me a $1,000 check via PayPal for my silence. "Your participation in the previous round of Mannequin was stellar. If you ever want to enjoy our experience again, please let us know," the message said. I knew they wanted me to walk away from all that with the money in hand, but I had too many questions. How had they been able to create such an authentic virtual world? And how did it affect people in reality? It seemed like a fever dream bleeding into life, and I needed to know more about it. So I came up with a half-brained scheme. I would rejoin Mannequin under an assumed name, and this time I would document everything that happened to me so I could figure out what they were up to. That night, I logged in and paid the fee. Then I went down to the local thrift store and bought a firearm. Something told me if they really were kidnapping their contestants during the night, I would need to be prepared. When I got back to my place, I pretended to go to sleep, listening to every sound to see if they were going to try anything. To be honest, I've never felt so paranoid in all of my life. When I was finally ready to let my guard down and try and get some shut-eye, I heard the shattering of glass. Instantly, I leapt up to fire at the intruders. Bullets flew through the air and struck the target, and I ran to turn on the lights and follow any other attackers. Except, that it hadn't been an attacker at all. It was another player for this sick game, holding a recording camera and wearing that same weird jumpsuit. Immediately, I retrieved the flash drive and checked online. Mannequin had been streaming live. They were using the poor soul I just killed to show their subscribers a new attraction. Me. I got a new message from the website. Congratulations on my survival. You've really proven yourself to be quite a capable contestant, and we want to take things to the next level. How would you like to sign up for a full season with Mannequin? Something told me this wasn't a request. They were going to kidnap me and use me as one of their attractions for as long as they could. Made to be a puppet on a string, killing others just to stay alive. I don't think I can live like that. In fact, I know that I can't. So I'm leaving my home, my job, and any friends and family I have. I have to run to stay a step ahead of the developers of Mannequin. I know that they are going to track me, and they will keep coming until they either capture me or kill me. But I have stocked up enough weapons to last a while, and I know a thing or two about disappearing. So even though I'm terrified, I still want to play this out and come out on top. Here's hoping that I can. I came here to change my life, and I guess that happened in more ways than I realized. A year ago, my close friend Angelo came here to get his own surgery finished and finally embrace his life as a trans man. But that never happened. Angelo was taken by a killer that targeted him for being transgender. I didn't know the details of how he died, but I'm honoring him this year by going through with it. I've suffered body dysphoria for too long and can't let fear get in the way. I know this makes me the prime target for this psycho, but I don't care. Dr. Richardson is the best in the business in the state anyway, and I had already been reassured that the top security measures were being taken. We won't let anything happen to you while you're here, Mike, they said. Given the struggles I have had at home, being shunned by family and forced to even live on the streets for a while, it was beyond relieving to hear that they have my back. Then, Monday morning, my worst fear reared its ugly head. The killer that had snuffed Angelo was back in town, and the police were either clueless or helpless to stop it. This morning marked almost 4 victims. I heard the latest ones, a bisexual couple from the outskirts of town, had barely escaped with their lives. The killer must be seething to know that they didn't succeed in taking their lives, I said with a smirk as I watched the news. A few of the others in the waiting room gave me a curious glance. They didn't understand how frightening this was, especially for me today. Day 4 meant someone like me was on the chopping block. But I'm here in the hospital, I reassured myself, and the statement from the last victim claimed the killer was a delivery driver, so they won't be anywhere near here. I will be fine, I said to myself. Michelle, are you ready to get prepped? The head nurse asked. I tried my best to grit my teeth and ignore how she had just used my old name. Legally speaking, I hadn't been able to get it changed yet. I followed her to the back room and she instructed me to strip. Leave your clothes in the bin, she said distractedly. Rough day? I asked, trying to keep things casual. I was already a nervous wreck. Sorry, I don't mean to be rude. It's just, I've been dealing with some issues at home, she admitted. I glanced at her name tag. Amber? I know that we just met, but if you need to talk, I'm here, I offered. I appreciate that. It's just difficult seeing so many people reach their dreams, and then my life seems to be passing by. What do you mean? Missed promotion? Husband always on the road? I asked. I guess a little bit of both. I'm sure you know this, but Dr. Richardson has been struggling to keep things afloat ever since last year. You mean because of the patient that got killed? But Angelo wasn't murdered. It had nothing to do with the procedure, I said, my voice sounding shaky as I spoke and remembered my friend and Amber saw it. Oh, I'm so sorry. You knew them? The nurse asked. Angelo took the first step to reach his dreams. He wasn't scared. He inspired me to take a leap of faith myself. Maybe you should do the same? I suggested. Amber nodded absently as she got my IV going and said, I wish it was that easy. I could tell she was tired of talking for the moment, so I let the last comment slide as I sat and waited for the doctor. Truth be told, even though I had just given her an amazing pep talk, I still wasn't entirely confident of what the future held for me. I was about to change my entire life. It was what I had been looking forward to for half of my adult life. I should feel excited. but something felt off. I was becoming sleepy, my vision blurred. I tried to reach for the call button, but already I was losing consciousness. Had someone slipped something into my IV? Those worried thoughts fell into a deep darkness as I fell completely out of it. I don't know how much time passed, but when I woke up, I was now lying flat on my back with my legs and wrists strapped down. It looked like I was in an old operating room, something not used for years. The lights flickered and the air felt colder than death. This was all wrong. I had seen Dr. Richardson's OR before. He'd given me a tour. This was definitely not the right place. I felt my heart race as I heard a door slam shut and tried to figure out what sort of torture I was about to endure. This had to be a bad dream. It can't be happening, I thought as the figure stood over me. It was Amber. What? Why am I here? I asked. She looked at me with pity, the way sometimes parents do when they think their kids don't know any better. She was holding a syringe in her right hand that looked like it was full of blood. Did you know that your friend actually died right here, in this very room? She commented. As though the reality of my situation was hitting me, I said it out loud. You're the one that killed him. You poisoned Angelo. The correct terminology is blood poisoning. He was type negative B, and all it took was a quick switch. Amber paused as she looked down at me, her pity turning to hatred. And Angelo died on the table like the pathetic animal they are. You're a monster, I whispered. No, Michelle, you are. My husband and I are merely the exterminators, she snarled as she placed the needle next to my arm. I frantically tried to move, screaming for someone to help, but I was alone. Alone with a serial killer that just revealed to me that they were working alongside an equally devious partner. The delivery driver. That's how you haven't been caught. Each of you covers the other's tracks, I whispered as I felt my heart begin to race. Then her phone rang. She huffed in frustration, placing the needle to the side on a small rolling tray, and walked toward the hallway. What is it? Whatever they were just about to inject into my body, Amber was sure it was going to have the same reaction it had on Angelo. I was about to die if I didn't act fast. Of course I know the police are looking for you, you klutz! You were sloppy, and now I'm the one cleaning up your mistakes! She was distracted. I had a chance and started to sway the gurney, pushing it ever so slightly toward the tray. The syringe was right in my grasp. Don't try to call me again. Pretty soon the cops will tap my phone and realize our connection. Amber snapped as she hung up. In that last second, I managed to swipe the needle and hide it just under my palm. My only hope was to attack her, try to defend myself. She was still distracted, trying to recompose herself as she sighed and looked toward the tray. What did you do with it? She snapped as she grabbed a scalpel, pressing it against my neck. I spit into her face. In that brief moment of confusion, as we were close to each other, I grabbed the needle and jabbed it into her thigh, plunging it down. Amber grabbed it and tossed it to the ground in shock, her hand shaking as she muttered, You fucking idiot! You do realize that now we both die! You will rot down here, forgotten by anyone that cared for you. She had dropped the scalpel on the ground. My mind raced. I pushed my whole weight to make the gurney fall toward her, forcing the nurse to fumble back as I used my fingers to grab at the scalpel and cut up my bonds. I had mere seconds to act. I was sure that Amber was about to attack me again, but to my surprise, she was running. As I got the last bond free and stood up, I chased after her. She didn't make it far. Already, the tainted blood was pushing through her system. Michelle, you have to help. I'll die if you don't, she whispered as I stood over her. I thought about how easy it would be for me to take this nurse's life, take revenge for what she had done to Angelo, and maybe countless others. But no, I'm stronger than that. Instead, I helped her to her feet and then knocked her unconscious, just to make sure she didn't attack me again. It's Michael, you idiot, I mumbled as I found the elevator and got us both out of there. Amber was taken to the ER, and I gave my statement to the police. I can't believe it. All this time we had a pair of serial killers under our noses, Tommy said, shaking his head. What matters is that they will both be brought to justice and no one else will get hurt, Nurse Lois said. I wanted it to be a happy ending, but I should have known better. Just as I finished giving my statement, one of the ER CNAs came up with the report. Amber escaped. They are in the wind, Mark explained. All of us exchanged a worried glance even as Mark checked his phone and said, I guess one of them sent this message earlier too. I don't think they're going to just stop killing. I was hired for night maintenance for an old hospital downtown, picking up trash and soiled linen. Nothing fancy. My new boss, Rick, explained to me that my shift started every night around 9 p.m. Your first and most important task is to lock all the entryways. We aren't a 24-hour emergency room, and after-hour visitation isn't allowed. We just don't have the staff to handle it. He rambled on for about another 15 minutes about how it was something that they wanted to try to do in order to compete with a newer facility in the upper part of the city, but I wasn't really paying attention. All that I really heard was that besides myself and a few floor techs and night nurses, the hospital was going to be empty. This locks all doors in the building. I suppose by default it also opens them all too. Use it to get into any office you need for cleaning, he told me, passing me a small red and gold key. Seems a bit strange to have just one key to lock up the whole place, I commented. Rick chuckled and gave me a pat on the shoulder. We're not Fort Knox, son. All right, so what do I do after that? I've got a printed schedule of the offices you'll clean every night. No need to break your back doing it all at once, am I right? He passed me some laminated papers that detailed the job and added that it was important to follow the schedule. Marty, the old janitor, got a bit lax and wound up in a bit of trouble, Rick explained. What sort of trouble? I asked, but Rick couldn't say. I was told to report to work that very night. I didn't really have much time to do anything except go home and shower. In the back of my mind, I couldn't help but to wonder why anyone would not want to keep a job this cushy. But I wasn't about to blow a golden opportunity. Honestly, though, because I lived so far from the facility, I barely had time to make it back. In fact, by the time I had reached the hospital, the doors were already locked. I reached into my pocket and took out the master key that Rick had given me, unlatching the door and heading inside. It was midway open when I heard a shout from behind me. Hey, hold the door! I turned to see a man wearing blue scrubs rushing toward me. You're running late too, huh? Bruce, he said, shaking my hand as he came in. I took the gesture and then started to lock the door again. Just as I heard the latch close, a car horn honked and I saw a man with a pregnant woman trying to get in. Hey, hold on! My wife's going into labor! He shouted. At first, I hesitated, thinking that if there was an exception to any rule, this would be it. But I had no idea whether or not the staff at ER would be able to help her, so I shouted through the glass. The emergency room closes at 9. You can go uptown to St. John's. Are you fucking serious? It's 1 minute past! The man shouted back. He looked enraged. I looked down at the key and sighed. I didn't really want to make a mistake on my first day, so I just shrugged and told him sorry again. He said a few more words I won't care to repeat here, beating on the glass a few times. Honestly, his whole demeanor went from frustration to furious in less than 2 seconds, and it was a bit scary. Then Bruce grabbed my shoulder. Hey, what's wrong with you? We can't turn a pregnant woman away, he remarked. But Rick said, he give you that whole spill about the doors and the schedule? Come on, the guy is obviously just wound a little too tight, he remarked, gesturing toward the door. Let them in. Look at her hurt. I looked up again at the irate husband and sighed. Fine, but if I get in trouble, this is your ass, not mine, I muttered. Sure, I'll get them up to labor and delivery, Bruce told me. The husband gave me the stink eye as he helped his wife inside. Then he and Bruce both took her to the elevator as I locked up again and finally headed for the time clock. 15 minutes later, I had grabbed my cleaning cart and was on my way to the first office. Honestly, I was a bit worried about the fact that I had also forgotten the schedule Rick gave me. But once I found a few empty offices and realized the whole floor was empty except for me, I realized I had nothing to be afraid of. I went from office to office doing that for the next 2 hours, finally relaxing when it seemed that nothing was behind the doors except for empty desks and bits of trash. I heard the jingle that played when a newborn is delivered over the intercom and smiled. Bruce had been right. The schedule was just micromanagement. Around 11:39, I took my first break and met a floor tech named Gina in the cafeteria. She was an older white woman that looked like she had just crawled her way out of a war zone. Gruff, tough, and no nonsense. When I explained who I was, she told me she didn't need to know much else. Just make sure you do the job right. Marty got sloppy in those last weeks. Didn't pay as much attention to details as he should. Got himself hurt. I recalled what Rick had warned me about too, and felt a strange, sickening feeling when she made that statement. What do you mean by that? I mean, it's just a silly schedule, right? He had a heart attack, son. And what do you think caused that? He made mistakes, went in places that he shouldn't have, she barked back. Like what? Doesn't matter. Just stick to the schedule, she insisted. I don't even have one, I admitted sheepishly. Her eyes widened and she said a few cuss words. What have you been doing all night? I rambled off the rooms I had cleaned, and with each number her facial expression got more and more disturbed. Did you at least lock them back? Gina snapped. Yeah, of course, but what is the big deal? Bruce said it wasn't important. Bruce? Gina repeated. Yeah, he works on the shift before you. I met him at the time clock. Son, I have been here for 13 years. Ain't no Bruce here. Now it was my turn to be confused. Then, who did I talk to? I whispered. It felt like my heart was going to burst from my chest. I was so nervous. Then an alarm came on over our heads. Code pink. What the hell did you let in here? Gina snapped as I mentally replayed the exchange. I had unlocked the door and let both Bruce and the young couple in. But the door had been locked before then, and Bruce didn't have a key. Fuck! I shouted as I dropped everything and ran toward the stairs. I made it to labor and delivery in about 6 minutes, grabbing the first nurse I could find. What's happened? I shouted, but he told me what I already knew. Someone snatched a baby! She shouted. I was told I had to wait there as security began to search the hospital, but no sign of Bruce or the infant was found that night. I remember telling the police to check the footage of when I let them in, but apparently the camera only showed me and the young couple. To this day, I don't know who Bruce was or how he got away with this, but I've learned to always lock the doors at 9 p.m. and keep them locked no matter what.
Life is cheap in Myanmar. That's what my father told me. And his horror story of what happened to him in that country certainly deterred me from going there. What's wrong with Myanmar? I was thinking we could all go on a family holiday like we did when we were... I started. No, Dad sharply interjected. I mean it. Anywhere but there. Remember that business trip I took for 3 months when you were a teenager? He interrupted a second time. I sighed and nodded. Dad adjusted his glasses, preparing to tell a long story. Men don't really notice risks in the same way as women. Well, perhaps that's a generalization. I certainly didn't notice any risks. My trip to Myanmar, along with 2 of my industry friends, Jack and Phil, started with a job opportunity. My dad sighed. I suppose my colleagues and I let our hair down a bit. We passed our interviews with flying colors. 3 months working for what we assumed to be a reputable company. The interviewer came out with us for some drinks. Steve, he called himself. He seemed like such a lovely, genuine guy to 3 drunken fools who were a long way from home. He wanted to take us gambling. And the next thing we knew, we were all in a taxi together headed far from the city. Far from civilization. He continued. As we stumbled out of the car, hands seized our arms and marched us towards a debilitated warehouse building. Jack, Phil, and me. But Phil? He was always strong-willed, and the alcohol didn't exactly help with that. It only exacerbated his fiery nature. I just wish he'd stayed calm, like they told us. But he didn't. He fought one of the men who manhandled, and another man shot him, point blank, in the head. Jack and I yelled in horror. I vomited on the floor, and I think Jack passed out. We were dragged into the warehouse, and we joined a factory line of people. People from all walks of life. All countries, cultures, languages. Tourists, business people, locals. Who knows? We were all the same there. Captive. Telecom fraud. That was the primary line of work for their slave operation. I worked in sex scams, but they ran all manner of operations. And my job? Well, I had to. It still makes me sick to think about it, but I do extort money out of people. I would pretend to be a woman, flirt with strangers, and then I had to capture incriminating photos of these men, if you catch my drift. I would threaten to show the explicit images to their friends and family, and they had to send endless payments to make us stop. They made them pay until they had nothing left. Things didn't work out for anyone who attempted to escape or even simply didn't pull in the numbers the managers wanted. I saw a man. Oh, I can't. I can't put it into words. They dismembered him. I still remember that man, reduced to a torso, an armless, legless body, left outside to rot in the sun. His screams were deafening, but his cries for help slowly died out. Too slowly. They had other ways of incentivizing us to work hard, of course. The better you behaved, the better your gig. And when I ended up in the office upstairs, well, I seized my chance. I watched the men in charge. They came and went at set times. I learned their schedule, and I used that to my advantage. I only had a 5-minute window, but I seized it and I made a call to your mother. I didn't know the Myanmar police number, but I told her everything I knew. The length of the car journey from the bar to the warehouse, what I could see out the window, everything. And then I returned to my desk before I was spotted. What happened next? I asked in a hoarse whisper. Dad held his head dejectedly. Your mother. She contacted the embassy in Myanmar, and they contacted the relevant authorities in Myanmar. Everything happened so quickly after that. They came. The authorities came. They stormed the factory and, well, it was over. It all seemed to be over. Tears streamed down my face as I watched the officers from the officer window. They swept through the warehouse, arresting every manager they could find. But the bosses on the office floor, they had guns and machetes, and they weren't going down without a fight. Dad started crying, and I couldn't figure out why. This was the end of the story. He was alive and well, sitting in front of me. Everything had to be okay. Who made the call? Our line manager asked. You think this is the day of your rescue? No, it is not. Who made the call? My dad said. And I was on the verge of owning up to it, especially when the gunfire, the hacking of limbs. Oh, it was awful. And Jack saw my face. He saw what I was about to do to save all of them, but he didn't let me own up to my mistake. Jack stood up and he said, It was me. My father and I sat in silence for a little while. It could have been a few seconds, perhaps a few minutes. I don't know. What I do know is that I didn't need him to finish the story, but he needed to finish the story. I could see it in his eyes. Less than a minute after Jack was killed, after he... Dad gulped. The officers charged into the workroom. They gunned down the 3 armed assailants. And that was the end. The end that I wished had come only a few minutes earlier. So, what happened to Steve? I asked quietly. I'm not sure why those words left my mouth, but it was the only thing I could say. Dad shook his head, croakily responding. Officials never tracked him down after everything that happened. Steve wasn't exactly his real name, I'm sure, but I still think about him. And I wonder. I wonder whether he still lures unsuspecting victims into traps. There will be other warehouses, after all. Other factory lines of captured prisoners. And that's a world I never want you to see, Anna. Okay? I nodded, vowing never to speak to my father about the topic again.
Strange invite from the dark web. To whom it may concern, you have been cordially invited to join the Longcoat Killers. Alongside this special invitation, a welcome package will soon arrive at your address. Failure to participate will result in termination. With freedom comes sin. I don't know what went through my mind when I first saw the strange card jammed into my P.O. box. I thought it was bizarre. Guessed it was some kind of weird initiation ceremony for something, or wrong address, or something inconsequential. But that name stood out. Longcoat Killers. What was that? I never heard anyone. Never even held a gun or a knife before. Growing up, I wasn't even allowed to play mature video games. So I threw it away, went into my apartment, and texted my girlfriend, Jenny, like it was any other night. Then there was a knock at the door. I hadn't ordered a pizza, but I thought maybe she had surprised me because she knew I was down on my luck with jobs recently. Yeah, I mumbled, trying to get a good look at whoever was outside my door through the peephole. It was pretty late. I could only see someone wearing a big black hoodie with a face mask on. I instinctively grabbed my own face mask and then kept talking through the peephole. "Can I help you?" No response. Okay, whatever. I ignored them and went back to my bed. Sure, it was nothing. Then another knock. This one was sharper and more urgent. "Who are you looking for?" I asked, deciding that a clear resolution would be the only way to make them go away. They raised a finger toward the door, pointing toward where they assumed I was standing. "Okay, sure. Well, my name is Akio, but I think you've got the wrong place." Then they showed a copy of the postcard that I had received, along with a picture of me. That made me straighten up and pay attention. "Yeah, I got the thing. Don't have a flipping clue what it means though, so go fuck with someone else," I shouted as I got out my phone and added, "I'm calling the police if you don't leave my hallway in 5 seconds. I even began counting down. I made it to 2. Then all of a sudden, a large metal blade smashed its way through my door, and I jumped backward. A second later, the hooded figure kicked the door down, holding what looked like a scythe in their hands as they moved towards me. "Holy shit," I said as I dropped the phone and stumbled backward. Immediately, they were ready to use their weapon on me, and I went into defense mode. Scrambling, I ran from my kitchen and grabbed the nearest butcher knife, waving it frantically toward the intruder. "Look, I don't know who you fucking are, but this is your last warning, man," I shouted. They swung their scythe hard, and I dropped to the ground. Then I lunged toward them, pulling them to the tile floor. Their hoodie had dropped, and I saw I was staring at the face of a young woman. It gave me pause. Why was someone so young doing something so horrible? Her eyes squinted, and she gripped her weapon tight. They screamed and rushed towards me, waving their scythe over their head to slam down on me. The only protection I had was my coffee table, and I barely made it under when the weapon got lodged. I used this chance to grab their legs from under them and tackle them backward toward my couch. Using my larger body weight, I hastily pinned the woman down and kept poking my fingers into her face to get her to stop. "I don't want to hurt you." I ripped their mask off, hoping that by revealing their full features, they might second-guess this crazy assault. Somehow, I managed to find the butcher knife and place it against their neck. "What do you want with me?" I asked, as they kept kicking my shins. They spit in my face, and I instinctively put my hand up to wipe it off. Then she butted her head straight against mine, tumbling backward. It was the determination in her eyes that told me she wasn't going to stop, unless I was dead. The scythe began to dig into my shoulder as I struggled to fight back. I panicked and realized my only option was the worst possible outcome. I turned my head and bit her hand. At the same moment, I punched her in the gut, and she lost her grip on the scythe. Her eyes were now filled with relief. Suddenly, Her body weight was crushing on top of me as she kept gasping for breath, and I found myself paralyzed with shock. And then it was silent. She was dead. The world had stopped spinning as I found my footing and looked at the apartment. And at the center of it all, a dead young woman that I had never seen before. I scrambled to find my phone, trying to comprehend what had just happened. This was self-defense. She broke into my home. I didn't do anything wrong. I kept repeating this over and over as I saw her own cell phone next to her head upside down, and I reached for it. Then it began to ring. I turned it toward me. Private number. I swiped to answer the call and shakily held the phone to my ear as sweat dripped off my forehead. Hello? There was a soft click followed by what I can only describe as the voice of an automated text-to-speech recording. Congratulations, Akio Musashi. You are now an official member of the Longcoat Killers. Please hold for further instructions. Instructions? A member? What were they even talking about? Another beeping noise occurred and the next message played. You have been assigned the following targets. I couldn't even listen to it any longer and tossed the phone away, realizing what was happening. This woman had been sent here to kill me, and now was being forced to join this strange group too. I told Jenny not to come back to the apartment and tried to call the police. Then I realized the killers were tracing my phone. A new app had shown up that I couldn't delete. Obey our instructions and you will be rewarded. I felt a sick twist in my stomach as I stepped over the dead woman. Then I ran. I texted Jenny and told her to meet me for coffee. A few blocks away, I thought maybe that would be good to keep them from following me. When she arrived, I admitted what happened and she was shocked, but she also offered an explanation. I know that you've been cheating on me. This was my way of getting revenge, you see. Honestly, I didn't expect you to survive. Jenny, I've chatted with online girls just a few times. It was never anything serious. Except that now because you survived, you'll be coming for me. You really know how to mess things up, you know that? She barked. Then I saw a red dot on her forehead and screamed for her to move, but it was just too late. They killed Jenny so quickly with a sniper shot that she didn't even get to take a final breath. My phone buzzed and my hands shook. No further distractions. You belong to us now. I only confirmed my compliance, realizing that any choice I made against them would result in more harm. I was now their servant, until some other poor sap gets caught in the game and kills me.
For background, I'm a 17-year-old girl and I work at a small Mexican store. Today was very slow, so I was mostly stalking instead of being on register. I was putting some sodas in the fridge, and this man comes around, so I moved out of the way so he could get by. He looked around, late 40s, early 50s, and he said hello to me and started smiling widely. So I said hello back with my customer service smile. He walked past me and was still smiling widely at me. I didn't think much of it since I thought he was just being friendly. I went back to stocking sodas, but some of them were very sticky, so I decided to go wash my hands. The bathroom is very small, as you might expect from a small store, and creaks very loudly when it's opened. It's really only meant to be an employee bathroom, since it's kinda tucked away in a sort of back area. And while it's not completely off limits to customers, most wouldn't go back there since it looks like an employee-only area, if that makes sense. So I went in and started to wash my hands. Not long after I entered, I heard the door start to creak open, so I looked in the mirror to see who it was, and I saw the smiling man's head. He'd stuck in only his head and was still smiling widely. He then noticed I was just washing my hands and said, "Oh, sorry," and slowly backed out and closed the door. I didn't think much of it since mistakes happen, right? So I just finished washing my hands and began to leave, and after opening the door, I see him almost directly in front of me, smiling. I again didn't think much of it. Maybe he just had to go very bad and thought might as well wait. He watched me walk by, and I avoided eye contact because I thought it was weird he was still looking at me when the bathroom was available already. I sat at the register since I was done with the sodas and waited for customers. Then I see the man walk out of the store. It hadn't been long since I'd sat down, so I thought it was a bit strange, but I again disregarded it since maybe he just quickly washed his hands like me. However, the more I thought about it, the more I thought it was weird, since from the outside of the bathroom, you could definitely tell someone was in there because the light was on and the sound of running water was very present. There's a part of me that wants to believe it was genuinely an accident and he was just a bit strange, but I'm really not sure anymore. In case there was bad intentions behind it though, weird smiling man who walked in on me on the bathroom, let's not meet again.